Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Day 2 of Global Spectrum Management Forum 2023. My name is Min-Hwa Kim, your MC today. Well, yesterday we had many experts in this field who shared useful information and their valuable insights through the 2 sessions. And we were also joined by passionate participants who raised their questions and exchanged their opinions during the panel discussions. And I think all of these things make yesterday's forum successful. I deeply appreciate that. And today is gonna be as good as yesterday because we have 2 sessions prepared for you with a fantastic lineup of speakers with different themes. And we also have panel discussion that will bring us extensive knowledge. You can look forward to it. But before we commence the session, let's take a moment to exchange greetings with a few of overseas attendees. First, I'd like to invite a representative from Romania, Mr. Octavian Nicolaev online. Hello.
Hello from Romania.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Well, we are joined by many overseas attendees here and online, so would you please send your greetings to other participants?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Chairman, and greetings from Romania to everyone. I'm very honored to take part in this prestigious event for the 3rd year in a row, and I thank to the Korean colleagues for the invitation. It is a unique and valuable opportunity to engage in the sharing of precious theoretical and practical knowledge from prominent representatives of both experienced and innovative administrative bodies and international organizations that are relevant to the space domain. I'm grateful for having been granted the opportunity to present the Romanian space project in the last year's Global Spectrum Management Forum and for taking part in such impressive experience sharing. Last year, I had the occasion to present our projects in Romania in the field of satellite communications and to share the experience we have achieved in this domain. Basically, we are in the phase of learning how to perform such activities, and each piece of information is important for us to define our further steps. We strongly believe that each nation has the chance now to enter into the space domain. Therefore, space education, space industry, and space exploration are at the top of our interest as an emerging nation in the space domain. This year, I'm here in the audience only, and I can tell you that our national projects are marching at different paces, but they are moving forward. That's sure. Technology advances at its own pace, and we must ensure it delivers its benefits to as many people as possible around the globe. I'm looking forward to hearing the presentations of this edition, distinguished speakers, which will surely be both informative and inspiring for the global community of spectrum managers that has already formed around this event. I wish you all the best and success. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And following the last year's participation, he also joined us this year as well, so thank you. And now this time, I invite an attendee from the floor for the greetings. Ms. Lise Cabarere from Rwanda. Could you please come up to the stage for greetings? Oh, thank you. Please welcome her with a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. My name is Lise Cabarere. I'm from Rwanda. I am here representing my institution, the Rwanda Space Agency. It's my great honor and privilege to be given a chance to extend my greeting to the participants of the Global Spectrum Management Forum 2023. I would like to use this opportunity to thank the Central Radio Management Service and the Korea Radio Promotion Association, RAPA, that organized this forum and thought to extend an invitation to the Rwanda Space Agency to come and attend the forum. It has been fascinating to learn the different trends and emerging spectrum technologies for the improvement of the lives of people and other things like disaster prevention and security reinforcement. I am particularly intrigued to learn the trends in satellite communications, licensing, and radio monitoring. I would like to remind us that satellite communications are playing a crucial role in complementing terrestrial services by expanding connectivity to distant and underserved communities, especially in developing countries. It is essential that we continue to safeguard the spectrum resources for satellite services to promote fair access and continue to narrow the technological gap everywhere in the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your wonderful greetings. Well, for the next greetings, I will invite Amgalan Chandra from Mongolia, Director General of Communications Regulatory Commission. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Dear distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and all offline participants. I would like to express my great appreciation to the CRMS Director General Johnson Kim and RAPA President and Jansum Sang, and for the organizing this effective and efficient, nice international forum. This international forum and great opportunity that fosters friendship and understanding between various nations and their peoples. We are learned, we are experienced a lot during these 4 days. I wish everyone wonderful and successful future, full new adventure, new experience, and new friendships. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. In addition to these representatives, we have many overseas attendees here and online as well, and your participation makes this event even more dynamic and abundant. So once again, thank you for your attending. Well, now it's time to start our first session with a focus on spectrum management for satellite. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker of today's session, Mr. Hwa-seok Oh, Assistant Director of Satellite Radio Monitoring Center, delivers a presentation under the title of Satellite Radio Monitoring Trends in Korea. Please come up to the stage. He's making his way into the podium. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
안녕하십니까? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Hwa-seok Oh, Assistant Director working at the Satellite Radio Monitoring Center, and today I will talk about the satellite radio monitoring trends in Korea. First, I will introduce the Satellite Radio Monitoring Center and Satellite Radio Monitoring and Interference Investigation, as well as the Satellite Radio Interference Investigation status and activities to protect important satellite communication networks and the advent of low-orbit satellite communication. It's located in Icheon City of Gyeonggi-do Province in Korea. We have established this in a city where the natural environment is great, and then there is low risk of interference. So we were fifth one to be established as the Satellite Radio Monitoring Center in 2001 and 2002, and in 2009 we started mobile satellite radio monitoring. And in 2016 we started non-geostationary satellite radio monitoring, and in 2018 we established and operated satellite interference source investigating system. And in 2021 we replaced the geostationary satellite radio monitoring system and established the new mobile satellite radio monitoring system. And next, I will talk about the satellite radio monitoring and interference investigation. 13-meter diameter monitoring station is located here for the domestic satellite and to monitor satellite interference and illegal radio waves so that we can protect the domestic satellites. Also, the range is 1.45 and about 150 satellites are under our monitoring range. And then this is about the non-geostationary satellite radio monitoring. We have a monitoring station system, as you can see here, and then we target the domestic satellites and we protect them, and we also investigate the international standards of such non-geostationary satellites. And also about 7,875 non-geostationary satellites are inside our monitoring range. And then we see the increase of the non-geostationary satellites recently that passed over the Korean Peninsula. And next, the satellite radio interference investigation. 3 people are working in 2 teams as full-time operators of the satellite radio interference investigation team. And then we do the pre-monitoring of domestic satellite radio waves to quickly detect and resolve satellite radio interference. So this is a pre-monitoring so that we can detect as soon as possible and then notify the related organization about the status so that we can make a prompt response. And we are also involved in international cooperation in investigation of satellite radio interference. And we started the joint geolocation of Earth station between Korea and Oman from 2019. It's helping us to build up our capabilities, and every year we participate in the International Space Radio Monitoring Meeting to make contribution to the overall development of the monitoring technologies across the world. And then we also cooperate with ITU to resolve international satellite radio interference disputes. So we signed an MOU in 2017. And then we actually received a request from the ITU to investigate such disputes. And then we made reports and submitted to ITU to make contribution. So we check interference after receiving a report, and then we do the pre-monitoring, and we search for the location of the interference source, and we conduct a field investigation to check the transmission signal and whether or not there is spurious in the equipment. And to investigate this, we need special equipment and facilities. So we have this satellite radio interference investigation interference source search system. So we have, as you can see, 2 facilities. So we have interference search system and reference station. So we search for the location of interfering source using the time difference TDOA and frequency difference FDOA of the radio received between the satellites receiving radio interference and adjacent satellites. So we built the first system in 2018 and then additional reference station in 2021. So by establishing a reference station system, now it is possible to search for the locations of military interference and overseas satellite radio interference. And this is a portable interference investigation equipment that consists of a portable signal analyzer, antenna, and cable. So we check transmitting signal of the Earth station, and we investigate noise and terrestrial wave influx, and we investigate any spurious waves generated by equipment. Next, I will talk about the current status and major cases in Korea. For the past 10 years, we have managed over 150 cases inside our center, and then it increased significantly from 2021 because of the new reference stations and facilities, we have expanded our capabilities, and then we are using this pre-monitoring technology so that this help us to detect and resolve interference through domestic satellite radio wave monitoring before reporting interference is needed. And there are satellite radio interference investigation status, and then some were still unknown cases, and then those cases happen because the interference disappeared during the investigation process, and the interference with adjacent satellite network happened because the interference happened with domestic satellites due to foreign satellite pointing errors. And then when it comes to spurious, interference happened due to influx of spurious from the surrounding area or transmission of spurious by the Earth station. Next, I will talk about the mobile communication signal inflow and retransmission as one of major cases detected in Korea. So the mobile communication signal flows into the Earth station equipment and is retransmitted to the satellite and cause interference. As you can see, the mobile communication signal 954.3 megahertz was detected, and then through the block converter, it changed to 14,004.3 megahertz, and it was transmitted to Earth station. So they showed that they showed very similar patterns, as you can see from the graphs. So we investigated and solved the process by searching for the location of an Earth station that caused interference, and we go to the field to do the investigation, and we found out the reasons for these, and then we took actions such as blocking the inflow of mobile communication signals after consulting with the operators on site. Divider modem and portals, which were not in use, were disconnected, and then we also checked the connection of the cables, and then connector, and then the equipment, and etc. So after taking actions, we checked the upload signal of Earth station and then confirmed the interference was removed. So at first, we focused on blocking such interference, but interference continuously happened. So we could know that interference can occur at any time at Earth stations in area where mobile communication is available, and also inflow path of the mobile communication signal to each Earth station was different. So we made a plan that we had to make a plan that can be applied to all Earth stations. So after investigation, our team found out that even if mobile communication signal inflows through various routes, a solution is a need to prevent the transmission. So regardless of the signals, if we prevent the transmission, then maybe the interference would not happen. So that was our first conclusion. So as you can see from the diagram, before the BUC, we installed a filter in the red circled area. So after installing the filter in front of the BUC, we check the spectrum. So before installing the filter and after installing the filter, you can see that the transmitting signal was blocked. And if you see the photos, you can see the filter that was installed and then how we check the blockage of the transmission. So we actively participated in on-site investigation and related institutional countermeasure meetings. And next, this is international satellite radio interference investigation requested by ITU. So ITU requested to search for the location of overseas satellite radio interference resources for the purpose of resolving radio interference disputes between countries. So we signed the MOU in 2017, and in order to get accurate data, we requested for reference station information, and we closely cooperated with ITU. So we searched for the information and data, and we submitted the data about the location of Earth station causing interference in June 2022, and that helped to resolve the disputes that have been there for a very long time. So searching for this was not easy without the information of the reference station information. So until this time, we cooperated with Oman and accumulated data, and that helped us to find the location of interference sources. And next, interference by non-geostationary satellite. So a non-geostationary satellite transmitted a signal while passing through the communication path between the Charlian satellite and the control Earth station, and it caused interference to the control signal. So the antenna was used, and the interference happened in the non-geosatellite signal radiation area. It started small, and then it became bigger to cover the Charlian satellite signal, and then it was reduced again. So it's because as the non-geostationary satellite changed the location, the interference itself also changed. So interference by non-geostationary satellite do not occur consistently, so it's not easy to detect. So we monitored Charlian satellite continuously and then checked the date of occurrence, period, and then other data, as you can see here. And then we saw that the occurrence was detected every 70 minutes, and then we saw which satellites were going through the routes of the Charlian satellite. So we monitored and checked when the relevant non-geostationary satellite have passed through the geostationary satellite communication path. It took us 10 days, and then, as I said, we have to check the period, and then we have to check whether that actually happened at that time. So it requires very high level of professionalism. Now I will talk about the joint geolocation with Oman. In 2018, we participated in the 20th International Space Radio Monitoring Conference, and both countries decided to cooperate on satellite radio monitoring by jointly exploring the location of Earth stations, and we had 4 meetings until 2022. And we conducted joint inter-country satellite radio interference investigation according to the agreement made at the international conference. And then we improved reliability of interference investigations by conducting joint searches. And then we strengthened the search capability for radio interference. And then it also helped to improve the process related to reference station investigation and selection. So we first investigate the geolocation using the radio interference investigation system, and we check the additional geolocation using Google Earth search. So we had 4 rounds of meetings and the studies, and then we found out the same main satellite and adjacent satellites, and we found out about 7.3 kilometer difference in 2020. And then near Singapore, we saw that the stations were very located in a very dense area. So we searched for the same Earth station here. And then these researchers have contributed to the international community. And then based on this experience, we want to expand our cooperation with other countries in addition to Oman. This is a mobile satellite radio monitoring. So we protect important satellite communication, investigate Earth station operation status, and investigate satellite radio reception in neighboring countries. So we check the Earth station and then whether it transmits noise and spurious. And we check inflow of interference signal to Earth station, and then we check the guidance activities to prevent interference and the use of illegal radio. And then when we visit there, we notify the operators any information regarding the illegal radio uses so that we can prevent such activities. In the case of investigation of Earth station operation status, we verify compliance with Earth station permits and investigation of use of illegal radio, and then we check 21 stations every year. And then for successful launching of a satellite in Korea, we use satellite network. So when it comes to radio protection of a deep space Earth station for controlling Danuri, the lunar probe, we check the interference investigation after the launching. So before the launching, we found out that the frequency used by other institutions may cause interference. So we investigated radio wave environment for successful first communication between Danuri and Earth station. And then after launching, we continuously check the interference and radio environment investigation to prevent any further Earth station interference. And when it comes to radio protection activities for successful launch of Nurio, for successful launch of Nurio, radio wave protection activities such as preliminary radio wave environment survey around the launch site and the interference investigation and illegal radio wave monitoring were conducted. Now we are living in the era of a low orbit satellite communication, and then many low orbit satellites are now in the orbit, and the UAM and VR and autonomous driving and other latest technologies that will make a 6G possible. Because of these, low orbit satellite communication has become more important. So satellite radio monitoring will be very important. So SRMC will do its best to monitor such activities. If you see the Starlink satellite group, you can see that the space is very dense, and then over 3,000 Starlink satellites are passing through Korea. And they use the same frequency band as a geostationary satellite, so the possibility of interference is increasing. And ITOR Article 22 should be well protected. However, because of the non-geostationary satellite, interference might happen. So, against this backdrop, our center is thinking how to monitor low orbit communication satellites in an effective way. And we are working hard with the relevant organization to improve our efficiency. And in next year's forum, I hope that we will be able to share the effective measures for the monitoring of low orbit communication satellites. SRMC, as a leader of satellite radio monitoring, is making challenges and then is sharing experiences with other countries that want to start the satellite radio monitoring. So please contact us for any question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oh, for your informative presentation. He provided an overall explanation on satellite radio monitoring and interference investigation with some examples. Thank you very much. And now we move on to the second presentation. Dr. Jun-Gyu Yu, Director of Electronics and Telecommunications Research Institute, delivered his presentation under the theme of Satellite Communication Technology Trends, View on Frequency Perspective. Let's welcome him with a big round of applause.
예, 반갑습니다. 저는 방금
Good afternoon. My name is Jung-Gyu Yu. I am from Etri, Korea. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak at this important forum. And the title of my presentation is Satellite Communication Technology Trends View on Frequency Perspective. So this is the Global Spectrum Management Forum, and I have been involved in developing satellite communication technology, and I'd like to share with you an overview of frequency viewpoint on satellite communication technology. So this is the order of my presentation. First, I will give an introduction and then talk about spectrum issues and then come down to the conclusion. So in terms of conclusion, you can see on this slide the generations of mobile communication development. As you may well know,
예, 아시다시피 이제 완지부터
so we began with 1G and we have come as far as 5G. In 2G, we got digital communication. And smartphones came out in the next generations. So the mobile communication has moved into voice, moves from voice to mobile data to convergent services. And in 5G, we have industrial IoT, IIoT, local 5G, and autonomous driving. Those are enabled in 5G. And in 6G, there's a lot of discussion on about what is going to be possible in 6G. A lot of people talk about coverage extension in 6G, and as you may well know, we're going to use a lower band of frequency from 28G, and so we'll get more scalability. And in 6G, to increase coverage, the satellites will play a certain role. So this is a coverage map of mobile communication. So around 4.8 billion people around the world can use the internet. That amounts to around 60% of the total population. And you can see that most of them are congregated in some densely populated areas, and the rest, the white spaces, is not served with internet. And pre-COVID, about 4.1 billion people traveled by air a year. So many people are flying around the world. The service is only provided to a little over that number. So we're discussing what is going to be possible in the unserved and underserved areas. So that missing coverage is probably going to come from satellite communication. And then we have the question of whether satellite communication did not exist before. Actually, in the first generation, we had a low Earth orbit LEO satellite services. In 1997, Orbcomm of the United States provided the world's first LEO satellite communication service, and then there were two issues. From the user's point of view, we can see that in Chile, we also have satellite communication in work. However,
네. 그리고 사용 요금이 굉장히 비쌌습니다.
and also the subscription fee was really expensive. You had to pay for like the equivalent of a bowl of noodles in Japan when it was provided in Japan. And also the installation cost and the operation cost of CAPEX and OPEX was very high. So that's why the LEO satellite services first generation wasn't really feasible and turned into a failure. And more recently, we're seeing more attention being paid to LEO satellite services. So we had terrestrial network standards and we also have the satellite network standards. But beginning the 5G and the next releases. Up to 5G, satellite and terrestrial networks were separated, but in 6G, a lot of people are looking forward to integrated satellite and terrestrial networks. So this is the 3GPP roadmap, which is looking forward to one unified network. And so up to release 18 on this slide, it was just bandpipe reception. However, beginning release 19, we will have something different, and in release 20, there will be standards that bring together and integrate the standards for terrestrial networks and satellite networks. So in the past, we had the geostatic orbit satellites, GEO, which were located around the equator. But more recently, we have so many satellites. And you probably read a lot of news about SpaceX's satellite launches. And also, there's a lot of reliability that has been enhanced, and so many companies are joining the bandwagon for the LEO satellite communication business. So in the first generation, I mentioned earlier that the CAPEX and OPEX was prohibitively high. However, more recently, building TN around the world is actually more expensive and less cost efficient than building satellite networks for around the world. And so many operators are already quite active in the LEO satellite communication fora. So we have OneWeb, and from Canada we have Telesat. Telesat has not been really prominent more recently, but they have recently signed another contract with a satellite producing company. And then we also have Starlink. Starlink has reached 1.5 million subscribers, and we can see that it is turning profit each year. And more recently, something that is in motion is the Kuiper from Amazon. Unlike Starlink or OneWeb, it used Ka band, and Starlink and OneWeb uses Ku band. And then there are other examples that are marked in red. I was hesitating when I was putting together this presentation, but more recently I see good news about Telesat. And you probably also read news about satellite direct-to-cell. There are a lot of attempts being made, and I went to the Mobile World Congress early in this year, and Qualcomm and other companies demonstrated satellite direct-to-cell technology. For satellite direct-to-cell, there are two different perspectives, meaning there are the mobile satellite service MSS operators such as Globalstar, Iridium, or EchoStar, which have their own satellites. And then there are the new operators such as Starlink, AST Space Mobile. So these two different groups are working in different directions. They're different in that, for example, Globalstar can send emergency SOS message services through Apple iPhones using its own standard, and it's expected to be based on 3GPP NTN standards, and EchoStar has its own standard as of now. However, going forward, it is probably going to adopt 3GPP NTN standard as well. In other words, some of them are trying to use their frequency bands, but Starlink and AST Space Mobile are cooperating with the mobile network operators, MNOs. So Starlink version 2 plans to be equipped with a large antenna. So the shadow areas of T-Mobile will be provided with mobile communication services, and AST Space Mobile, if you use a Samsung Galaxy smartphone, they actually had a successful demonstration, and they have succeeded in placing a satellite direct-to-cell call. So this slide was about the different approaches of the operators. And WRC-27 and WRC-23 will also talk about satellite communication bands. So some regions are not included in 2023. However, in 2027 agenda, the global IoT service coverage areas will be increased. And Earth to space allocation, band allocation has already taken place. Currently, the allocation is based on space to Earth. However, for the WRC-27 agenda, there is going to be attempts for Earth to space. And then we also have ESIM, Earth Stations in Motion, for fixed satellite services. Next is spectrum issues. So I will try to cover the regulatory view, and because ETRI is a research and development institution, we are conducting research on how to resolve the interference issues. So I will share the technical view. Now, spectrum sharing. So there are so many spectrum bands. And we have the TN and satellite networks, and then we have the NGSO and GSO. They are there together. And in 6G, I said that the TN and the satellite networks will be integrated. Then there might be TN versus NTN interference issue. Because in the past, if the bands were separately used, if we have air to G or other interference issues that arise from being on the same band, there will be a lot of interference. So I'd like to talk about the potential interference issues. So this is GSO versus NGSO. There would be the geostationary orbit satellite. As Mr. Song said earlier, so an NGSO might come in line with the GSO, and that results in interference. And there is, again, a GSO and an NGSO. If it emits and it hits the side lobe of the GSO antenna, then again, we will see interference. If we were talking about one or two satellites, it's not much of an issue. However, if there's a lot of NGSOs up in the air, then interference will increase. So, as the previous presenter said about radio regulations, NGSO versus NGSO interference can be solved based on the Article 22 of ITU-RR. But how we're going to stop that is going to be the issue that we have to solve. And then we have NGSO versus NGSO interference. So there would be the gateway link feeder interference, and there would be also the interference that comes between the user link and the other network. So inline events are more serious when they're experienced by a gateway earth station. And this can be actually easily solved if we increase the distance. And there's also interference between user links. OneWeb and Starlink, as far as I know, might be able to solve this by allocating different bands across different countries. And so the NGSO versus NGSO interference can be solved by coordination between the operators. I was talking earlier about AST Space Mobile. So using the LTE band of AT&T, it did an experiment using Samsung smartphones. So in areas where there is no TN, terrestrial networks, they would be providing services based on LEO. But if we get 6G, the role that satellites are supposed to play for 6G is to increase the coverage. And we will see so many more NGSOs up in there, and then we'll have to deal with the interference issues. So if we see more NGSOs, as you can see, we didn't have a lot of payload launch traffic until the mid-2010s. However, more recently, the numbers shot up. And you can see the dense distribution of the satellites currently in the middle diagram. So LEOs mean that there will be 300 to 1,000 kilometers up in the air, and that would reduce the throughput. And that's why we have to have so many more satellites up in the air, and that will increase interference. So how we are going to mitigate interference while enhancing throughput? That is a question that we have to answer. So we looked at how terrestrial networks solved this issue in the past. In terrestrial networks, they would build small cells to isolate the networks to reduce the interference. And in a similar way, we came up with the idea of satellite clusters. So this would be able to enhance throughput while mitigating interference. That was our hypothesis. So to move on to what I just talked about, the satellite clustering. Here we have the conventional satellite up on the right-hand side. It works on its own. And then we have the satellite clusters under that. We have the leader satellite in the center, and it is surrounded by the follower satellites. So the followers serve as cooperative nodes to improve performance for space-to-Earth service. In cluster formations, we would have two types. There would be linear ATO-based, a long-track orbit, and then we would have circular or PCO-based, projected circular orbit-based. So we would have the leader satellite, and then we would use slightly different orbit parameters. So when we're looking upwards from Earth to space, then we can see that the followers are circulating around the master or a leader satellite. So this is a simulation of the formulations. So a long track orbit, you can see it looks like a linear cluster. But for the projected circular orbit PCO formation, it's in circular shape of cluster. So we did some analysis on this. So we were doing two different types of clustering. When we're shaping a ring, it might be circular, the green triangles, and then there would be uniform distribution, which is represented by the blue dots here. And so we believed that satellite clusters have the strength that the master satellite could be large and the slave or follower satellites could be smaller and less expensive. And the master or leader satellite would include a lot of features that would usually go up on base stations, Earth-based stations. And I cite coverage manageability. If a satellite goes out of order, then other satellites within the cluster can take over. However, this is technically a little bit complicated. So really precise and accurate control of the satellites is important. And inter-satellite link capacity would be limited if we're talking about a cluster. However, the fortunate thing is that the distance between the master and the slave satellites is a little bit shorter than what we saw before, and this is able to increase the throughput. So these are the use cases on the right-hand side rectangle or box at the bottom of the slide. So localization, direct access to smartphones, distributed computing, this is all possible. So again, we're talking about two different formations. We have circular clusters around the master satellite. And then we would have uniform formations within the circle. And this is a result of what we simulated. We find that as the number of satellites increase, the gray bars on the bar chart represent the unclustered formation. So we see that the throughput is high when there are about 1,000 satellites for unclustered. However, the throughput goes down when the number of satellites goes up beyond 1,000 because of the interference. And when we do clustering, we can see that the throughput increases as the number of satellites goes up. So we have the DPS and JT, and as the number of satellites grows, dynamic positioning selection, DPS, is showing better performance than the joint transmission. And here we have coverage when compared to when we don't do clustering to when we do clustering, we can see that the general coverage does increase in general. And lastly, the conclusion. So NGSO systems are seeing rapid increase. I spoke just now about clustering. There are technological solutions. There are regulatory approaches. These should all be shared and brought together in research. So going forward, we will have to look for ways to have stable and reliable satellite networks. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing your insights through your presentation. He offered a glimpse into the trends of satellite communication technology with a standpoint of frequency. Thank you very much. And now we move on to the last presentation of this session. He joined us through Zoom, Mr. Peng Zhao, Vice President of Government Affairs and Policy at One app has prepared a presentation under the title of LEO Constellation and Spectrum Licensing Best Practices for NGSOs. So let's meet him on the screen. Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you
Okay.
well, please.
Great. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the organizer to invite me for this important event. Unfortunately, I'm joining you virtually only from London. So introduced, my name is Pang Zhao. I work for OneWeb, and I was asked to give you a short presentation about the best practices of spectrum and licensing in general for the LEO systems. So a quick few words about ourselves, about the OneWeb company. I think some of the previous speakers already mentioned us. We are one of the LEO low Earth orbit companies to build a kind of end-to-end network system that connects everybody and everyone from every part of the world. In fact, our network is the first LEO constellation of this generation, at least, to complete its space segment deployment. We finalized launching all of our satellites that is required to provide 24/7 coverage as of today. And our commercial service already started in some part of the world, mainly for now is North America and Europe. But we expect a full coverage by end of this year. A quick view on our shareholders. So UK government, but also Bharti and SoftBank are among our shareholders, Eutelsat as well. And especially in Korea, Hanwha System is one of our major shareholders as well. So all those shareholders bring a lot of experience in telecommunications, and in telecommunication with mobile, with the terrestrial network, but also from the satellites system, like Eutelsat and Hughes have been, in the satellites world for the last 30 years. From our perspective, we have, as I mentioned, we finalized our deployments of all our satellites that is required. We have, as of today, 634 satellites in the sky, in orbit. We achieved that using 19 different launches over the last 2 years. We launched approximately once a month, and we finalized this deployment. So all our satellites are manufactured in the US, in Florida, where we have a kind of automated assembly line to produce 1 to 2 satellites per day. In terms of ground infrastructure, we have 24 Earth station gateways that is operational as of today across the globe. And there's 20 that we are finishing we're finalizing to achieve the real kind of a global kind of a ground network to support the space segments. Our operation center are in London and in USA, in Virginia. Finally, when it comes to spectrum, so we use 2 kind of spectrum on the Ku bands, so around 10.7 to 12.7 and 14 gigahertz. That is what we use for the service links. So that's what connects our satellite to the user terminals. And then we use the Ka band on the 28 gigahertz on the uplink and 18 gigahertz on downlink. We use that for gateway links. So a quick word about low Earth orbits, LEO constellations. So one of the key things that we see from when we bring a LEO satellite communication and compared to the traditional geostationary satellite communication, one of the main differences, of course, latency. That is a way of physics. Our constellation is about 1,200 kilometers altitude, so that is 30 times closer than the traditional geostationary satellites. And for that, we can achieve a latency of about 50 milliseconds. That is very useful for typically for real-time communication, basically. So if you take, for example, 4G and 5G network, when we doing backhaul for them, one of the key applications for 4G and 5G is the voice over LTE, for example. That is high definition voice over 4G network. That typically require latency of below 150 milliseconds, and so we can easily achieve that using LEO technology. There are many other applications as well, such as gaming and cloud computing. So we see that with this kind of advantage, we will see a huge demand on the satellite communication and data communication, especially. At the same time, as mentioned by one of the previous speakers, the supply side, the cost is diminishing. We are manufacturing, as I mentioned, 1 to 2 satellites per day in our mass production assembly line using automated assembly line. And also the launch cost has significantly reduced. We're launching them at a low Earth orbit. We're launching them in batches of 35 satellites per rocket. So all this kind of reduction of costs and basically the cost of the supply and the larger demand, that will disrupt, from our perspective, the shift the paradigm of satellite communication. So now we come to the how to achieve that and how regulate how we can bring this kind of innovative service to each market and each country. And one and first and the foremost thing is the spectrum, right? For any kind of wireless communication, without spectrum, nothing is wireless, and that's especially the case for satellite industry. So satellite industry use permanently, at least the new LEO constellation use permanently the Ku band and Ka band. As I mentioned, we use Ku band for the gateway for the user terminals and Ka band for the gateways. They are different configuration depending on the operators. But more and more, we are also looking at the Q and V band. So 37.5 to 40 to 50 gigahertz. I think previous speakers also mentioned there's a lot of work that is being planned for the next WRC 27. And that's something that we're looking at. For example, OneWeb, we have, so we're already using Ku band and Ka band, but we also have ITU filings in the Q and V bands. But from our perspective, it is very kind of critical for each government to give the industry enough kind of assurance for the stability and the spectrum availability for the industry to be able to, to concentrate on the innovation and to have the confidence to invest in the technology. Another thing that was touched as well already, but I just mentioned here very quickly, the satellite coordination is extremely important. The coexistence between the NGSOs like ourselves and GSOs is enabled by the ITU framework, ITU radio regulations. For example, Article 22 was mentioned, and we use the EPFD for the protection of the GSO systems. And the way, at least our company is implementing this is that we have what we call the GSO arc avoidance. So we're using a kind of a tilting mechanism. So whenever our satellite goes across the equator, so let's say that's the equator, when the satellites go across the equator, they tilt the angle, so to avoid kind of a direct inline event with the geostationary arc. So from that perspective, it is kind of a progressive pitch around equator. It's something that we have by design from day one, and it avoids this kind of interference to GSO networks, to all the GSOs like this, and enable us to respect the kind of the EPFD limits. The interference management and coordination between NGSO is even more complex. So there's a lot of coordination that is required between the different operators. And we follow the coordination procedure from the defined by the ITU radio regulations, right? But until such kind of coordination agreement is agreed and is signed between the two NGSO systems, the ITU radio regulation requires a kind of later filed system to eliminate any harmful kind of interference into the earlier filed system. Right? But after successful coordination, the registration of those kind of system is will go into the ITU MFR, the master registers, and that will enable the international recognition of the rights. And finally, still just on this point, so all the governments across the world has ratified the radio regulations, and they can apply this to their own countries, and it is up to each country to adopt adequate national legislation to include those provisions. But that also means that all the national authorities need to take into account the coordination status and the MFR status of each operators when they license them in their own market, domestic market. So that was on the satellite coordination. So I move on to a few more kind of more general kind of licensing policies, just to help the kind of the best practices that we see across the globe. So typically, for example, we think that the policy and national policy, domestic policy to introduce a LEO system need to embrace this kind of innovation and put the consumer first. So there are, quite a tendency to say that to protect the kind of the domestic operators as well. Of course, that is understandable. But as you know, the LEOs, by the way the LEO constellation is designed, it has to be global, and this all the kind of service is not designed for one specific country, but to be able to provide a service to a global market, and to introduce that into each country and the domestic market. One typical best practice is to have a kind of a open sky policy and to do away with the landing rights, and that allow the kind of overall the foreign capacity to be used by all the kind of by each of the consumer. One example is the European market. So I provide a case study here. So European and EU used to have a kind of landing rights as well for their satellite system, but since 2002, they took some major step to do away and to abolish the kind of landing rights, so that each authorized network operator is free to choose any space segment supplier that they can. So basically, it allows the foreign operators and domestic operators to provide services without requiring a landing right. They of course still need a kind of national license, service provider license, but the landing right itself is not required anymore. And that is typically reciprocated as well. So when European operators goes outside of Europe, this is kind of landing right can be reciprocated as well. Other policies to facilitate the kind of a rollout. So typically, as we see, there are we expect a lot of kind of a user terminal to be deployed and to enable the fast and efficient deployment. Many countries embrace what we call the blanket licensing. So typically, once user terminal has been type approved and also has been kind of licensed, then the location of those user terminal is not just require some kind of registration, or sometimes it doesn't even need registration, and that can be just be sold to the end users, etc. So it's a way to facilitate the licensing of those earth stations. And of course, the type approval as well. So there are type approval by several kind of standardization organization across the globe. It's also useful to say that certain type approval could be recognized by other countries directly without need to go through exactly the same process about the type approval. So here I give another kind of example from New Zealand. New Zealand in the KU band, for example, have a kind of a license exempt approach. So it's not even a blanket license, it's just license exempt. So everybody can use this frequency for satellite communications as long as they respect the kind of a technical envelope. So if they're using the same within the same kind of frequency and the similar below the power limit, then it is not even necessary to get a blanket license or any kind of individual license. So this is what they call the GIRL. I put quick reference to there. So it's very it enable satellite service to be deployed very quickly and introduced very quickly into New Zealand. There are other things. I probably won't to have too much into that, but typically giving a kind of a single window of processing of license of satellite license, that's quite useful. As ourselves, we have to go through the 192 countries to ask for license to operate, and each country may have slightly different kind of regulation. But in order to adapt and quickly and introduce our service, would be mostly helpful to have a single window of those kind of license applications, and to have a kind of a time-bound application process. I think this comes towards the last point. Of course, the fees and taxes that we pay as operators for our operations, for the spectrum, and also for the user terminal importation, import duty, etc. That has eventually kind of impact on how cheap or how costly our service will be in each individual countries, right? So typically taxes have a direct impact on how many consumer will adopt the service as well. But one thing, for example, to say is that spectrum fees are typically need a kind of a revamp to be able to adopt the very large contiguous bandwidth that we require to provide service in each country. Also, NGSO, for example, gateways uses multiple antennas, as you can see on my next slide. But typically, what we call one gateway, in fact, has over 15 antennas on the same site. It's a kind of antenna arrays. So there are still licensing regime out there that is licensing per antenna basis, but we believe that approach by site basis is probably much more appropriate, because all those antennas are using exactly the same frequency ranges. So in terms of kind of spectrum denial to other services, is exactly the same as one antenna in one location. So giving a final case study, which is from Australia, about recent kind of spectrum fee reform. Starting from 2020, they started the consultation. So Australia, ACMA, the regulator there, started the consultation. And one of the key goal of that was to to enable kind of a more kind of satellite services and satellite operator to attract more investment in the space service as well into Australia. So this consultation, the process was very well run, as usual by ACMA, through two kind of round of consultations, and sorry, and the final outcome of it was done in July 2021. And in fact, in our specific case, we saw a kind of spectrum licensing fee reduced by 90%, right? So one of the things they do also, it was to introduce a kind of a system price for the earth stations. So the gateways, as I mentioned, as you see on the pictures here, that's a typical kind of a gateway that we have. Not in Australia, not that much snow, but that's a typical kind of antenna array that we have for one gateway. Right, so with that, I think it comes to the conclusion of my presentation. Just a quick summary, or we have here, we really, to enable the kind of our service into each of the markets, we really encourage all the kind of regulator to look and embrace this kind of innovation. It's a new thing. Although some system existed before as a LEO, but the real kind of a proliferation started only a couple of years ago. And of course, the spectrum access is extremely important, to have this kind of certainty and fairness about how we can, which spectrum we can use. And by the way, the spectrum we have implemented in our satellite cannot be really changed depending on which kind of country we go to. So it's really, the international harmonization is really critical. So ITU framework to design what spectrum is utilized for FSS, typically in our case, is extremely important. And a few other things that is related to the licensing and best practices that I summarize here. I won't repeat that again. But just the final message is that I think the regulations, and especially spectrum regulation, is a means to an end. It helps to develop the kind of competition, and one of the key things that we will do is to help to bridge the digital divide, on places where there's no terrestrial network, or to complement the terrestrial network. So with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Peng, for being part of this forum with your valuable presentation. Now we'll take a short coffee break. Take this opportunity to network each other over coffee. We'll resume at 3:10. Thank you. Well, we now commence the fourth session, and we've shifted our focus to international cooperation for spectrum management. For this session, we have 4 speakers from various countries, and they will deliver their presentation about the theme. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker of this session, Mr. Amgalan Chandra. He will deliver his presentation under the title of International Cooperation for Spectrum Management in Mongolia. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, again. Hope you have enjoyed the short break. Okay, today I want to introduce the International Cooperation for Spectrum Management in Mongolia briefly. My name is Amgalan Chandra, Director General of Communications Regulatory Commission of Mongolia. Okay, this is my presentation contents, such as introduction of Mongolia, legal environment of CRC, structure of ICT sector, main responsibilities of Communications Regulatory Commission, regulatory trend, international cooperation, ongoing projects in CRC, and future activities. our organization. Okay, Mongolia is the world's largest landlocked country, located in East Asia, bordered by Russia to the north and China to the south. Average bordered kilometer is around 4,000 kilometers with China and Russia. It covers an area of 1.5 million square kilometers with a population of just 3.4 million. Most of the country is hot in summer, extremely cold in the winter, with the January averages dropping as low as minus 30 degrees. Highest peak is 4.2 thousand kilometers. 2,000 meters. However, Mongolia territory is big. The current population density is very low. The density is only 2 people per square kilometer. Capital city name is Ulaanbaatar. Mongolia speaks Mongolian language. According to the research among Mongolian aged 15 and above, 53% were Buddhist, while 39% is the non-religious. There are several ethnic groups, Halach, Kazakh, and others, and 21 populated provinces. Has anyone been in Mongolia in this room? No one being in Mongolia. Right. Okay, and this slide is showing the history of Mongolia. You can see the first road line. Mongolia was founded in the 12th century, and Mongolian Empire lasted for 400 years. After gaining independence, Mongolia spent 70 years under communist rule after being ruled Qin dynasty. It's the name of the Manchu. Since 1990, Mongolia has been governed democratically. Current government types the parliament. You see the second road line. There are 70 ministries, 21 agencies, average GDP total $60 million US. Economic is agriculture, mining. And there are several mineral resources, copper, coal, molybdenum, gold, so on. Okay, the membership and legal environments. Mongolia has been a member of the ITU since 1964, and the World Trade Organization member since 1995. According to the recommendation of World Trade Organization and ITU, the CRC was founded in 1995. The Parliament has approved the following major laws in ICT sector, such as Law of Radio Wave in 1999, Law of Communication 2001, Law of Post in 2003, Law on Licensing in 2022, Law on Digital Signature in 2021. This slide is showing the ICT sector organizational structure. In general, the ICT sector is operating under the Prime Minister of Mongolia. The ICT sector's policy and laws are created by Ministry of Digital Development and Communication. Additionally, the CRC, Communications Regulatory Commission, issue licenses, create and approve relevant regulations, guidelines, and licensing and technical requirements. We know that basically regulatory organization serves as a link and road between government, business entities, and consumers. And the regulator should adopt the following critical approaches: transparency, open activity, non-discrimination, and financial independence. It's the regulatory trend. Mission and main responsibilities of regulatory. According to the law on licensing, CRC issued the following licenses to the Mongolian entities and private sectors. Service of communication license, usage of spectrum license, TV and broadcasting license, service and internet license, service of postal license. According to the law on communications, CRC responsible to prepare proposal of state policy, licensing and certification, managing spectrum management and monitoring, standardization and type approval, interconnection, enforcement of universal service obligation fund, numbering and resolving disputes. This chart is showing the statistics of interference complaint from the spectrum license owners in Mongolia. And these are resolved and handled by our spectrum monitoring team for the last 10 years. You can see the average number of complaints from this graph. And average among 10 years, it's around the 250 per year. 250 per year case, interference case. Due to increasing number of wireless products in market, hour of interference never decreasing as much. Okay, current status of the spectrum monitoring system in Mongolia. Thanks to the great support of CRMS and Ompum company, Korean granted spectrum monitoring system project is implemented in Mongolia twice, in 2014 and 2020. Remaining one semi-fixed from Ompum and 5 portable stations from Enritsu of Japan and Roder Schwarz of Germany are purchased by CRC fund. And currently we have the total 2 fixed stations and 1 semi-fixed and 5 or 6 portable stations. As well, we had purchased the portable and semi-fixed electric and magnetic field strength measurement made by Roden Schwarz, Germany, and Narda, Italy. Roden Schwarz RF range covers 32 3 GHz, 700 MHz to 6 GHz, and semi-fixed Narda covers 300 kHz to 18 GHz. Actually, in recent years, this type of monitoring request is increasing from the public and mobile network operators. You said when we purchased this equipment in 2018, 2022, 2023, we are more focused on this kind of system recent year. Again, this CRC cooperates with several international organizations, communication regulators, and businesses in ICT sector, such as ITU, APG, UPU, International Institute of Communication, and other regulators of Singapore, Taiwan, Korea, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Thailand. MOUs were signed with the Taiwan and Thailand regulatory last 5 years, as well as we signed with the MOU with the RAPA, KISA, Standardization Commission of Korea. CRC has cooperated with the key social media and cybersecurity organizations in recent years, and including Meta, Cooling International, Internet Watch, Alphabet, so on. Cooperation cross-border countries. As I mentioned before, Mongolia bordered with China and Russia only. As we know that the cross-border agreement is the critical element of spectrum planning, minimizing potential interference between service and border areas. Since 2013, in accordance with the agreement, both sides arranging bilateral coordination between every 2 years. In result, there are 9 agreements on the aiding radio frequency band with Russia, and 2 agreements and several notes with the administration of China in last 10 years. Okay, and this figure is showing the handover ceremony of the first Korean 8 fixed spectrum monitoring project. It's implemented 2014. The production of entire equipment installation and training is organized by A&D Engineering, and now it's changed the name ONPUM, which is showing the demonstration outside and first. And all on training and training, installation, designing is organized by the ONPUM company very successfully. We are operating this system almost 10 years without any problem. The ONPUM provides very good maintenance service every year and upgrade system, upgrade software every year. In 2017, KSP, Korean Knowledge Sharing Program, policy consultant project is implemented in Mongolia. Project name was the Strengthening National Spectrum Management and Monitoring System. Through this KSP project, Mongolia received the mid and long-term plan for nationwide spectrum monitoring system, methods for spectrum allocation and preparation of future IoT and 5G service and policy, recommendation on establishment and operation of conformity assessment test laboratory, on required test equipment, facilities, technical standard, and budget estimating. In 2022, one more CRMS granted project of fixed monitoring system is implemented in CRC again. All system installation, terrain design of permits are performed and invested from the ONPUM company of Korea. Our department has prepared the tender document according to the recommendation of CRMS and case Korean Knowledge Sharing Program. We prepared the tender document, and CRC will purchase the following items and implement this project in future and next year. And National Radio Frequency Monitoring and Radio Type Approval System, project name is. And we're going to purchase 7 sets of unmanned fixed monitoring system with direction finding, 8 sets of unmanned semi-fixed VHF radio monitoring with direction finding, 3 sets of mobile HF, VHF, UHF, SHF radio monitoring with direction finding, and one mobile monitoring including microwave detection finding system, and 1 fixed AMF-HF radio monitoring direction finding system. There's going to be established one national spectrum monitoring management center in UB and Central City, and 2 regional monitoring centers will be established in the western side and eastern side, and 1 full set of the wireless test AMC test laboratory in capital city. And the estimating budget is gonna be more around $10 million US. Okay, this slide is showing the spectrum usage of mobile, 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G technology in Mongolia. Okay, you will see we use the CDMA 450 for 2G system and FPT28 and 700 megahertz for 4G, CDMA 850 for 2G and 4G, and GSM 900 we used for our 2G and 4G system, 1800 for 4G, 2100 for 3G, 2500 for 4G, 2300 for 4G system. Currently, we have Mongolia has 4 mobile operators. And CRC issued the trial license to 5G last year, and we're gonna issue commercial license at the end of this year to 4 mobile operators. We allocated assigned it 300, 3500, 4500, and 24 to 28 gigahertz for 5G technology. Okay, and this is my last slide. And incoming years, CRC focus on the following issues. As, improvement on efficiency of spectrum utilization. We are working on the refarming frequency of 2G, 3G, frequency replanning for 5G, national radio frequency monitoring system, supporting the fair competition, mobile number portability, national roaming, emergency broadcast system. Okay, we're going to issue the licensing regulation for 5G spectrum license, unified service licensing regime. On the market research, consumer protection, we are focused on the type role, laboratory, and certification system. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Your presentation helped us better understand the mission, roles, and ongoing project of CLC of Mongolia. Once again, thank you very much. And we move on to the second speaker of this session. The next presenter is Mr. Kosar Soy, Acting Director of Telecommunication Regulator of Cambodia. He delivers a presentation under the theme of Spectrum Management and Regulation in Cambodia. Please give him a big hand.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for CRMS for inviting me to speak in the Global Spectrum Management Conference. And today I have pleasure to share with you about spectrum management and regulation in Cambodia. In this presentation, I'm going to highlight some key points about the background, organization chart, spectrum monitoring system, frequency allocation for mobile communication, international operations, the development of spectrum legislation, spectrum management reviews, goals and challenges. For the background, Cambodia has an official name as Kingdom of Cambodia. That the flag, there are 3 colors, blue, red, and the white temple that represent the monarchy, country courage and determinations, and the temple it show the country rich histories. And the capital city of Cambodia is Phnom Penh. The total land area is 181,035 square kilometers, and it is located in Southeast Asia. The total population estimated by the World Bank in 2022 is about 16.7 million people. The border, Cambodia shared the border with Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. And the official language of Cambodia is Khmer. And Cambodia located in the monsoon season, that are divided into main seasons, dry season and rainy seasons. And the currency of Cambodia called riel. And the majority of the state religion is Buddhism, Theravada. I would like to highlight why we need radio spectrum management for Cambodia, because the spectrum management can enable us to create the national frequency allocation plan in order to well manage the scarce resource of the country, and also to assign the spectrum more effectively to the operator to ensure that they can provide the good services. And thus, it can make available rapid and efficient nationwide for communication, and also to serve as the national security and defense, as we know that there are a lot of risks and danger in the society. So communication is very important for the security, and also support the crime and prevention and law enforcement, because now a lot of crime, not only physical, also via the internet or cyber security and so on. Thus, it can foster the conservation of national scarce resource, as we all know that the spectrum is scarce resource for every country, and it is limited. When it is assigned and cannot well managed, it will cause some issue later on. Thus, it can to push the other sector moving fast forward and foster economic development, because digital sector play a very key role now to boost the country economy, and other ministry or sector depend on the communication, especially like internet and the quality of service such as wireless communications. And also to promote scientific research. We have known that the country can be developed if we get the good services, as like Korea, it's very fast and high technology, and digital and spectrum play a very key role in this country. And also to avoid harmful interference. So well spectrum management, we can avoid interference which cost a lot of money to prevent and to manage it. I would like to show you also about my organization chart. The Telecommunication Regulator of Cambodia, called in short form is TRC. It is under the Ministry of Post and Telecommunication Ministry. But the ministry works only for the policy level, while the regulator is the authority that has the power to monitor the operator, including mobile operator, internet service provider, submarine cable, and the tower codes, and also issue the license and law enforcement. And the head of the regulator is chairman. And under the chairman, there are 5 commissioners that supervise the department or bureau. And there are 6 bureaus, including Administration Personnel and International Relations Bureau, Planning and Finance Bureau, Telecommunication Regulation Bureau, Radio Frequency Regulation Bureau, where I come from, and Competition and Consumer Protection Bureau, and the Internal Audit Bureau. So among the 6 bureaus, it is under the supervision of the commissioner. And for the Internal Audit Bureau and the Public Procurement Unit is directly to the chairman. And chairman can also nominate his advisor to support his work. And from my bureau, there are a total of 23 staff. One is acting director, 4 deputy director, and 3 chief of division, and 15 officials. And there are 5 divisions that there is the chief of division that in charge, supervised by the deputy director. And those divisions, including administration division, regulation and radio communication technology division, radio frequency monitoring, radio frequency coordination, and radio communication licensing divisions. For For spectrum monitoring system, the current status of the monitoring system that we are using, including fixed system, semi-fixed system, mobile and portable system. And the product that we are using, one is A&D system, which is previously model of the on-pump product. And it was manufactured by in 2014. It is a Korean aid that we got it, and the frequency ranked from 20 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. And another which is a Rosenforge product, DDI-205, that was manufactured in 2015. The rank is from 20 megahertz to 3 gigahertz. It was purchased from the vendor. And semi-fixed, we got 2 sets Rosenforge product that was produced in 2022. And for the mobile, we got 2 sets as well that was produced in 2015 and 2022. And the rank is from 20 to 6 gigahertz. And we got 5 sets for the portable that all are Rosenforge product as well. And the product was produced in 2015 and 2022. For the case that our organization that found and caught the illegal using frequency and causing interference, for the airborne, we in April 2023 we found 1 case that caused interference to the VHH airband and complained by the aviation, and we worked together with the stakeholder to sort out that problem. And for the mobile interference, we got 2 cases in 2022 between the operator, and we got complaint, and we discuss and coordinate on the solution. For the illegal using frequency, that mobile frequency band, we found 1 case that are illegally used by the mobile operator. For this case, we asked them to come and talk and warning to them and make the guarantee that they know using illegal in the future. Otherwise, we'll take action on penalty to the company. And we revoked 1 license for the mobile operator that they do not operate to comply with their license. This is the picture of the monitoring system that we have and we use things. So that the first one is a fixed monitoring that we use it 24 hours for checking the signal and those spectrum that measuring the EMF, electromagnetic field, and we have got the semi-fixed monitoring that we can use it to find the signal that are used by the operator and to find the interference causes. And we have got 2 land greaser for the mobile monitoring that our monitoring team use it frequently when there is a report by the other mobile operator that cause interference to the network, and also to measure the frequency along the border for preparation of joint border meeting annually. And the other is a portable receiver and direction finding that Rosenforge product. And currently, the KOICA, Korean International Cooperation Agency, also come into my organization to discuss on the donation or the supporting, as they have found our government have a really strong commitment. Especially we have adopted the digital government from the set into effect and practice from 2022 to 2035. And with this commitment, the Korean International Cooperation Agency and see that it is important to support that kind of system to strengthen radio spectrum management and monitoring system. And now the process is between the government that we are sending the letter to the KOICA headquarters to final approve on the fund. And in this project, there are 3 fixed monitoring, 4 fixed monitoring and 3 mobile and fixed, semi-fixed. And also there are 4 set portable monitoring system as well that the project fund costs around $9 million. That is very good for using this system if we can get the project done. And the project scope is will be implemented from 2025 to 2029. For the frequency allocation for mobile communication, we allocate frequency band 850, 900, 2100, 2300, and 2600 to the mobile operator in Cambodia, which are main mobile operators, which is Smart Ashara. Total bandwidth is 230, and Medphone 150, Cellcard 132, and the least one is only 30 megahertz for Citel. And this technology, they use only 2G, 3G, and 4G for the operations. For the mobile communication industry, in terms of network coverage of the land area, the 2G mobile coverage is 86% of the land area, while the 3G only 79%, 4G 82%, and the 5G mobile network, 5G technology hasn't been implemented yet. It's maybe the government is take into consideration to implement it in 2024. And by subscriber, among the 4 operators, Smart Ashara have 7.3 million subscribers, Vitel Cambodia 8.6 million, CamGSM 4.2, and the least one is Citel, only 150,000 subscribers. And so the total subscriber of the mobile network is 20.4 million subscribers. For the international cooperation, telecommunication regulator of Cambodia, we join cooperation with Asia-Pacific Spectrum Management Conference annually that we discuss on various topics in this conference. And also for ASEAN framework, we join like Working Group on Spectrum Management Conference that we annually update our spectrum policies. And also APG 23 from 1 to 6, we also join the discussion, comment on the output and collective view of the regions. And for the AWG, we also join every year, discussion among our APT members and contribute the ideas and comment on the input. And for the WRC 23, which is a very important event for every member state that join toward better and use of spectrum. And we, TRC, join with the ministry together to represent the member state in this event for the upcoming in Dubai. And for here, the international cooperation, we join the discussion with our neighbor, which we call Joint Technical Committee, that's short called JTC's meeting, the bilateral meeting between our neighboring country to discuss on the issue related to spectrum interference and to agree the band plan coordination zone to avoid the interference along the borders. And during the COVID-19, the meeting were postponed, and we expect to resume in 2024. For the development of the spectrum legislation, currently, just a month ago, on the 31st of July 2023, The subdegree on the organization, management, and distribution of radio frequency was adopted officially. Actually, so far we don't have any Radio Valve Act, that kind of thing. We just have the telecom law. And so we lack of the regulation for the spectrum. And so this is important for our implementation in this sector. And now we have 1 year to implement this subdegree. And so in order to effectively implement it, we have to draft some sub-regulation called PRACAS. There are 6 main PRACAS on the condition, procedure for provision, modification, and transfer revocation frequency license, the condition and procedure for satellite, and on the condition for procedure and accredited individual for radio communication equipment. And the other 3 is on the type of services requiring radio frequency, on the condition and procedure of frequency radio spectrum license auction, and the spectrum conversion plan. So these 6 very important, and we also work with the P4I from our partner for infrastructure from Australia to support the regulation at the moment. And for spectrum management revenue, we collect the revenue through the type approval fee. In 2022, there are 2,400 model registration. That is very high, while in the past only 300 to 400. Because of the law enforcement set by our chairman and the minister, that all the product in the market must be registered. And so rising from 300 or 400 to 2,400 is the large number. And also we issue the frequency license in this 2020. We got around near 10,000 frequency license. And we also found some illegal use of microwave link and radio-based license, and so we penalized them in 9 cases in 2022. That what we have done for collecting the revenue to operate our organizations. And the goal of and challenges for our mission is implementing the national QoS and QoE is the goal. And the government also set on the regulation on strengthening quality of services, because we have the poor service in the congested area, because of the hesitation and lack of investment by the operators. And also our monitoring system to ensure the good quality of internet service also limited. And so we are strengthening it right now. And we also impose regulation on telecom and standard. We don't have our own laboratory to test any telecom equipment yet, and we are in our goal to bring in the laboratory to test our telecom products. And for the challenges like of laboratory, such as EMF and EMC tests, lack of technical staff in telecom and ICT, lack of capacity building, regulation and spectrum, and also illegal spectrum usage. And the frequency refarming and arrangement also the big issue that we need more coordination to sort out this kind of issue for the upcoming 5G technology and 6G technology. Thank you for my presentation.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. He just gave us an overview of spectrum management of Cambodia along with the introduction of TLC. Once again, thank you very much. And now we move on to the third presentation of this session. He will join us through Zoom, and Mr. Victor Kweka, AG Director of Tanzania Communications Regulatory Authorities. The theme of his presentation is spectrum management in developing countries. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you well. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think you can see my presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to present spectrum management in developing countries, a case of Tanzania, and an apology that I couldn't make it to attend physically with other delegates who are there. This presentation is outlined in 6 different sections as we see it through, as I'm going through one section after the other. I will start with the country profile. As you can see on this slide, the United Republic of Tanzania is that one you could see in red in the map of Africa. We are surrounded with 8 different countries, and our country, as per the last year, 2022 national census, the population is 61.7 million. And the geographical area or the geographical size of our country is 947,300 square kilometer. We have a coastline of almost 1,424. And the language, we are using both English and Swahili. And as you can see, the communication sector, specifically the mobile one, we started the first generation, which was pure and analog, in 1994. And the second generation was launched a year after, 1995. The 3G services was launched in 2007. The 4G services was launched in 2012. And the 5G services was launched last year, September, just a year from now. With regard to these technologies, the 2G services has covered the population of almost 98% of Tanzanians. The 3G services population coverage is 77%. The 4G services population coverage is 65%, and the 5G services population coverage is below 5% because it has just been launched a year ago. This is a short history about Tanzania. Back to the subject matter, we are all familiar that radio frequency spectrum is the portion of electromagnetic spectrum from 9 kilohertz to 3000 gigahertz. And within this range, there are a lot of radio communication services which are there and have been allocated through ITU. And we know the importance of why the spectrum should be managed. And I think my colleagues have been presenting a number of issues. Why should it be managed? Just to highlight the few ones, we know that we do manage the radio frequency spectrum to allow the operations of different radio communication services. As per the ITU radio regulations, we might be aware that there are more than 40 different radio communication services, whether it is mobile services, fixed services, satellite, broadcasting, and the like. There are so many. So if they are not, the spectrum is not well managed, there is a possibility of having harmful interference between these wireless services. But for us to have an effective and efficient utilization of radio frequency spectrum resource, then it is very important to make sure that this scarce resource is well managed. These are some of the applications, and we are much familiar with that are using radio frequency spectrum as a resource. I will talk a little bit about spectrum harmonization. As you are all aware that ITU has divided the world into 3 regions, Region 1, Region 2, and 3. Tanzania is right here in Region 1, and we are trying as much as possible to make sure that we harmonize our spectrum. It's very important to make sure that we harmonize our spectrum for a number of reasons. As you might be aware that as one of the developing countries, it could be very difficult just to have your own spectrum use, which is not in line to the use of that spectrum to other countries. So for us, we tried as much as possible to make sure that we have fully aligned the harmonization of spectrum within Region 1, but we also understand there are some of the frequency bands that have been harmonized across all the 3 regions, meaning ITU Region 1, Region 2, and Region 3. Why should someone harmonize, or how is it so important for spectrum to be harmonized? We all understand that we want to take advantage of economies of scale so that we could have a low-cost terminals. If Tanzania, as one of the developing countries, we could just choose ourselves a specific, a certain frequency band to use for our use that is different from other use from other countries, definitely the price of terminals could be very expensive. So we want to take advantage of economies of scale when more administration or more countries have harmonized the use of spectrum. But we know that spectrum has to be harmonized to ensure that there is interoperability between systems, also to facilitate coordination between countries to avoid harmful interference. As I've said earlier, that Tanzania, as a country, has 8 different neighbors. So we have to make sure that we fully harmonize the spectrum used to avoid some of the interference that could happen along the borders, just because the services that are used in the 2 countries are different. Also, we understand that by having harmonization is the way of establishing international system in the networks and to enable roaming between networks. I do believe there are some people probably have traveled all the way to South Africa, to South Korea with their mobile phones from different countries, just because they've been able to harmonize the use of spectrum bands. They just could use their mobile phones without a need of changing the terminals just because they've traveled to a different country. So spectrum harmonization is what gives value to spectrum. I will talk a little bit about policy, legal, and regulatory framework in Tanzania. As what have been said by our colleagues, we have a policy, National ICT Policy of 2016, which is addressing the policy issues relating to ICT and particularly communication services in the United Republic of Tanzania. I know the technology is changing very fast. We are currently reviewing this policy, which was issued in 2016, and hopeful by the end of this year or early next year, we might have a new national ICT policy with a much emphasis on the digital economy. As a country, we have TCRI Act of 2003. TCRI stands for Tanzania Communication Regulatory Authority, the government entity I'm working for. And this entity was established through the Parliament Enactment Law of 2003. So this is the act which is also mandated TCRI to take all the responsibility in the managing of the radio frequency spectrum in the United Republic of Tanzania. Also, we have a registration called Electronic and Postal Communication Act, or EPOCA, of 2010. This is the main legislation trying to address all issues relating to communication sector within our country. And for us, there are 3 subsectors we are in charge with: the postal subsector, the broadcasting subsector, and telecommunication subsector. So this is a registration that is cutting across all these 3 subsectors to address all communication-related matters within our country. With this act, we have more than, we have 23 different regulations trying to address communication sector, but the ones which are in line with the radio frequency spectrum, there is this regulation of EPOCA, Radio Communication and Frequency Spectrum Regulation of 2018. And also we have EPOCA licensing regulation of 2018, which are trying to address a number of issues, including the fees relating to spectrum resources. And we have a number of guidelines trying to address on how the spectrum could be used in effective and efficient manner in our marketing. So these are the nutshell of the policy, legal, and regulatory framework we have in our country. More on that, our country is having a conveyed licensing and regulatory framework, which, among others, support the following. When we issue a license to communication services like mobile network operators, the license duration is for a period of 25 years. And that technology do support, the license do support technology and service neutral. It means once we give you a license, you can use the technology of your choice. You can use the different services of your choice in line with what your license duration and the other conditions that are there. So once we give you, for example, a spectrum in 900, previous probably we assigned that spectrum when we are using it for 2G. With the converged licensing framework that we have, which support technology and service neutral, it means that you can use that spectrum band, 900 band for 3G. You can use it for 4G without adding any further license from the regulator. Also, we have a regulation which do support passive and the active infrastructure sharing. We understand spectrum is a scarce resource. So if there are two operators who like to share their spectrum, put spectrum in a pool, there is a regulation which is addressing that one. It is allowed within our market. We also allow secondary market spectrum trading through merger and acquisition. So our markets currently have 6 different mobile operators, and we anticipate there will be some consolidation within the market. So we have this regulation which is trying to address this issue of secondary market acquisition through merger and acquisition within our market. Much have been said by my colleagues about spectrum management. For us, we are looking on spectrum management key components, dividing them on spectrum planning and allocation, spectrum licensing and assignment, spectrum monitoring and enforcement, in line with the coordination, international coordination as well. The issue of spectrum allocation and planning, we all know that when we go to ITU, International Telecommunication Union, where the decisions are made through World Radio Communication Conferences, WRC, like the one which we are going to have later this November, we normally allocate different services on different frequency bands. And for us, being a member of ITU, when we come back to our country, we are trying to plan the use of that band for a particular services. So what we see in the picture is one of the frequency bands that have been planned and replanned and keeps on changing from time to time, as you might be aware. And this is typically relating to ITU Region 1. I know this band might have a different use in other countries, but allocation of this band back then in ITU Region 1, specifically in Africa, in 1989, the frequency band 470 all the way to 862 megahertz was used typically for analog broadcasting services. We call it the GE89 plan. But in 2006, through ITU meetings, the decision was made to migrate from analog to digital, and the band have been earmarked to be used for digital services. Considering the digital platforms they are using spectrum efficiently, then it was found that there is a need of reducing the spectrum rather than using the entire band of 470 megahertz to 862 megahertz for digital broadcasting. A portion of it was allocated for IMT, where we call digital dividend band 1, or 800 megahertz band. And then in 2015, 15, then another decision were made to take another portion of that band. We call it digital dividend band 2 or 700 megahertz. And as you might be aware, in this year, WRC 2023, there is agenda item relating to review the use of this band. And the discussion is still ongoing. We know that some countries are thinking of having another digital dividend within that band. Some countries, they're still insisting on to keep using this entire band of 470 all the way to 694 for mobile services. The issue of spectrum assignment and licensing. We are using 3 different licensing methods in issuing the spectrum. Currently, there are some of the key bands that has already been assigned to our licensee, the broadcasting services like the FM radio and TV. And there's mobile services, the GSM, the 2G, the UMTS, 3G, and the LTE services, 4G and the 5G. And there are some satellite services. But as our country, we really understand that spectrum is a scarce resources. So when we issue this spectrum, depends with the availability. Once the availability of the spectrum is not much compared to what is required, we normally use a market method. But once the availability of spectrum is there assured and the demand is low, then we are using administrative methods in assigning that spectrum. But we are also using commons or license exempt in some of the frequency band that you don't need to have a license from the regulator for you to use that frequency band. Specifically for the time being, we are using 2.4 gigahertz and 5.7 gigahertz, and we are looking on the possibility of using the lower part of the 6 gigahertz as well in the near future as a licensed band. As you are all aware that spectrum management, apart from planning the spectrum and assigning that spectrum to different operators, it's the duty of the regulator to make sure that we keep monitoring the usage of this spectrum band. When we keep monitoring the use of spectrum bands, we get the feedback on how best we can plan those frequency bands and accommodate new services that are coming in the future. This picture shows some of the mobile stations we are using for monitoring the spectrum, but we also have other device terminals for monitoring, like spectrum analyzer or portable radios from different vendors, which we are using countrywide for doing spectrum monitoring and enforcement to make sure that the spectrum that has been assigned to the operators are used appropriately. At the same time, we do monitoring to investigate if there are some illegal users of the resources who have not been assigned spectrum by the regulator. Spectrum management. There are a number of challenges that Tanzania as one of the developing countries face, and one of the challenges, the high spectrum demand for wireless broadband services. As you are aware, most of markets today, even our markets, there is a data hungry, more broadband services required, and the spectrum is not sufficient to accommodate the demand of these data services. There is some issue of cross-border frequency interference, though we are trying to have a bilateral, apart from agreements or the international regulation by ITU that are in place, we have bilateral agreements with 8 other countries who have borders with Tanzania, so that we handle some of this cross-border interference, which do happen here and there. But we, through the coordination process, we've been trying as much as possible to reduce the occurrence of this kind of interference. Another challenge is the technology is changing very fast than the change of registration regulations. You might be aware that sometimes you have a police trying to be futuristic, but the technology is changing very fast, and you find yourself maybe something has not been well addressed within the registration of the regulations. So this is one of the challenge. But also there is challenge of underutilization of spectrum in rural areas. As you might be aware that some of the rural areas are not economic viable for business purposes. So some of the licensees have not been using the spectrum within those areas. And this is one of the challenges, but there is a mitigation measure that have been taken by the government to ensure that the government is offering some subsidies to some of the operators to provide services in the rural areas or unserved areas for universal coverage. And also another challenge is convergence between space and terrestrial technologies. We know in a way it is an opportunity, especially when through the space you can cover the remote areas, but it's an area that most of developing countries we might find ourselves, we are not in full control because most of these satellites will not be owned by our administrations. But another challenge is regulatory tools, such as spectrum monitoring system. The mobile vehicles we have shown in one of the slides are very expensive to a number of our countries. So for someone to manage this scarcity resources spectrum must have modern state-of-the-art equipments in place to make sure that the spectrum is well managed, either through planning or monitoring. And these tools is not cheap, it's costly once you need to buy it because they are not manufactured in our markets. Lastly, spectrum is a lifeblood of wireless networks. You can't have wireless networks without the use of spectrum. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Through his presentation, he walked us through the overall management of spectrum in Tanzania, along with his organization TCRA. Once again, thank you very much. And now we move to the next speaker, and this marks our final presentation for today. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Mario Mattimiko-Blue, Research Director at Infotech Oulu Institute, University of Oulu, Finland. She delivered her presentation titled Sustainable Spectrum Management and International Harmonization via Zoom. So hello, Doctor.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. You ready?
Thank you for inviting me, and my apologies for not being able to participate there in person. So greetings from Finland. Do you see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Great.
Okay, please.
Okay, so, yes, thank you. So I come from the research domain. I've been in the research domain for more than 20 years, and spectrum has always been my primary research topic. I have collaborated with industry and regulators the whole time I've been doing the research. And now, most recently, my research has been around 6G mobile communications. And here I want to give you some ideas that are out there in the research domain, especially around sustainable development, because that is such a huge and topical topic, and then how to introduce that into everybody's life and operations, including our work, is a major priority for all of us. So I hope that this presentation will give you some fresh ideas from the research community perspective. So I come from Finland, and in Finland we have started 6G research already 5 years ago. So the Finnish 6G flagship brings together business regulation, technology research, and sustainability thinking in order to develop the next generation mobile communication systems. And now, after we started the research, then there's a lot of globally ongoing research around 6G in Europe, in the different parts of the world, together with academia, industry, and other stakeholders. And there, the multi-stakeholder collaboration really is a key. And we've also been contributing to the global 6G development process. And I want to give one example of this collaboration between industry, academia, and regulation. It is this local 5G network deployment model, which introduced local spectrum licensing in 5G spectrum awards in many countries, including Finland, Germany, UK, and some other countries. So it was a result of very active collaboration between research domain, industry domain, and regulators, so that the 5G Spectrum Awards started to introduce local spectrum licenses in different countries. Unfortunately, in different bands, so there's a lot of fragmentation, but at least that new deployment model is there, and that has changed the spectrum management landscape. So we've done research on that, quite a number of research publications about new business opportunities for local 5G networks deployed by a variety of stakeholders, not just the big mobile network operators, but also other stakeholders are quite interested in having their own local mobile communication networks. The same development is expected to continue in the future towards the next generation 6G networks, and that then impacts the spectrum. As we all know, spectrum is the fuel for a lot of things, and you cannot deploy a local mobile communication network unless you have the rights to do so. And that then requires that we develop these new approaches also in the management of the precious resource. So then I want to go more deeper into the sustainability topic. Like, what could that mean in the context of ICTs, especially mobile communications, and also it has to impact the spectrum management as well. So sustainable development in general means the development that meets the present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And usually there are three perspectives to consider: economic, social, and environmental perspective. And now quite well, we have reached the consensus that in the ICT sector, R&D, we should consider these three interrelated sustainability principles: environmental sustainability, social sustainability, economic sustainability. And they're much interrelated. So you can solve a lot of environmental challenges just by developing more sophisticated systems and methods. But that might increase the price, that might be more costly, and so on. So they're very much linked. And we all know that the UN SDGs, they are the global framework for sustainable development, with their 17 goals, 169 targets, and 230 indicators. But only 7 of the indicators are ICT related, like the proportion of people having a mobile phone, the proportion of schools with internet access. So they're very, very generic, and they don't provide the design guidelines for the future systems, but they are important targets to be reached. And even reaching those targets is still far away from reality. But in reality, the ICT sector has a very close connection with a large number of SDGs, how digitalization can help many sectors of society. So 6G R&D started 5 years ago. We published the world's first 6G white paper in 2019 in collaboration with stakeholders. And one main conclusion from that work was that 6G R&D should be driven by sustainability. We made a follow-up white paper on connecting 6G and the UN SDGs in 2020. So this is already several years ago that the community realized that we can't avoid this topic. We have to integrate it into our operations. But the reality today is still that we're quite far away from that. I've been part of the ITUR discussions on IMD 2030, developing the framework recommendation, and now sustainability is there, but it wasn't easy to get it there. And what it means in practice is still not very clear. So in general, ICT sector has a dual role when it comes to sustainability, enabling role to help different sectors of society to renew their operations, to be more efficient, to create smaller environmental impact in the different sectors of society. It's called the handprint effect. But at the same time, ICT's own burden, especially on the environment, is significant. And it keeps increasing. Energy consumptions keep increasing. Devices are still used only a couple of years in many countries and tossed away. The recycling isn't still 100%. So we have a lot to do today regarding the ICT sector's own environmental sustainability burden. I've observed that many times we're just saying that it's okay that we consume all the resources because we help other sectors. But that's not the case, but we really have to do our best already now to stop the consumptions, the increasing consumptions, for example, the electricity consumption. And this all is a like a design criteria for the next generation systems. It should be considered both ways, to help other sectors emit less, absorb more, but also the own sustainability burden must be, the minimization of that must be a design criteria. And we need indicators for that. So what are the indicators to measure how environmentally sustainable a system is or a service is? Today's users do not know the environmental impact of their choices, what it is if you download a video through different network configurations or different device and network configurations. You don't see that information, but users would be very keen to know what the environmental impact of a footprint of their choices is, so that they could make conscious choices. And the stakeholders all have different roles. Research community has quite a big role in providing unbiased research results. Companies are there to promote their own interests, what is in the interests of the business. And unfortunately, much of the ICT business is to sell gadgets, sell services, consume more data, and so on, which are not really along with the sustainability principles. But at the same time, digital services could be used to reduce consumption elsewhere, like travel. I'm here remotely participating, and it's possible through these systems. So we all play a role, regulators especially. They are setting the rules that the systems and the use of the systems should meet. What are the sustainability-related requirements? What are the requirements for these global systems like the mobile phones and these networks? Hopefully they are not too different from one country to another, because the whole success of mobile communication is based on using the same equipment in the different countries and this international harmonization. So here are some examples of this environmental sustainability perspective. There are 3 sustainability perspectives: environmental, social, and economic. So for the environmental alone, there could be a lot of different metrics like greenhouse gas emissions, energy consumption, the use of materials, and so on. Even those are not yet clear what the metrics should be. Europe has collected information from the national administrations about what data the national level bodies collect today from the ICT companies about their environmental sustainability. And the list was not very long, and some countries don't collect any data. So it's like an emerging new topic, which traditionally has been in the ministries of environment. But now we're talking about the ICT, the ministries of telecommunications and transport and those parts. So even this linkage between now the environmental sustainability becomes a key topic for all the different sectors, including the communication sector. But the expertise is not necessarily within that domain, but it might be elsewhere. So it really requires a lot of collaboration between these different domains, environmental domain and the actual communications domain. So here I've had the example of using this reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, redesign, remanufacture framework for environmental sustainability, which is a known list of things in terms of environmental sustainability of different fields. Then we could use these frameworks and consider what they mean in our context, what they mean for ICT, what they mean for 6G, what they mean for 5G. Clearly, we need to reduce end-to-end energy consumption. It is achieved through improving energy efficiency, but that metric alone does not capture that we really reduce the total energy consumption end to end. We have to reuse resources, have modular structures, and so on. Recycle, recover, redesign, and remanufacture. Then some examples for the future. So the ICT systems are actually a powerful measurement tool for collecting sustainability-related data, environmental sustainability data, social, economic sustainability data. We can do a lot already with today's systems and solutions, sensors, imaging systems, and so on, to collect this data. 6G will combine communication service with other different kinds of services, including locationing, imaging, sensing, computing. Those brought together within the one system can give you a very accurate local situational awareness of a variety of things which can be used to help to solve the major sustainability challenges. And we need to share and optimize the use of all potential resources, optimize the use of energy, optimize the data transfer. We should minimize the exchange of data, not just talk about maximizing the transmission of data, because that's not the sustainable way. But now we really have to consider where to do the computations, where to store data, which data even needs to be transferred. That changes the whole network architecture design, where the different functionalities should be when they are designed based on the new sustainability related criteria. Energy consumption has been a design criteria as long as I've been in the field, but now it's more and more important to consider that. So the energy efficiency is a metric that is used, and usually it is some kind of ratio of what you produce in terms of how much you consume some resource. And no, if you just produce more with less, still you can lead to higher end-to-end consumption. So the efficiency metric alone is not enough, but the consumption is needed. And this sustainable development happens in all sectors. It's very much like sector-specific thing. Communication sector, ICT sector could learn a lot from the other sectors where the development of sustainability frameworks and methods and indicators is progressing. So it really requires collaboration across the sectors, across the stakeholders. I'm giving you one example of the status of sustainability discussions around 6G. 6G is expected to come to the markets around the year 2030, so we're quite far away from the time when we can buy the 6G equipment, but then the design is already ongoing. And an example, the European Union and US in their Trade and Technology Council, they made a statement about several key themes. One was 6G. They published the 6G outlook at the end of last May, and their sustainability is specifically included. 6G technologies must be an enabler for sustainability, considering environmental, social, and economic perspectives. And then what it could mean in detail is reduced carbon footprint, energy efficiency, reduced energy consumption across all sectors through this enablement role, generating less pollution, reducing other environmental impacts, and to better contribute to long-term social sustainability while maintaining economic feasibility. So these perspectives really are there now to be considered in the development of the system. So what does it mean for the different parts? I mentioned that I've been doing spectrum-related activities for my whole career. So then I immediately started thinking that what does sustainable development mean in my topic? Well, I don't have the answers. It's such an unexplored area, but I'll give you some food for thought what it could mean. And as we know, the competition between the wireless services over gaining access to spectrum is really tough. It's really hard. Spectrum is allocated already, giving it to another type of use, introducing new use is very, very challenging. And the spectrum bands, especially, for example, for mobile communications, the variety of bands has increased. 5G introduced different bands, like in Europe, we had 700 megahertz, 3.6 gigahertz, and 26 gigahertz. Quite different propagation characteristics in terms of what kind of deployments you should have. The 700 megahertz covers pretty big areas, 3.6 a little less, and 26 is very local. Very local, doesn't penetrate, signals don't go through the walls. So they have very, very different deployments in terms of where to place the base stations. Market structures change. When we started to talk about these local 5G networks in 2016, we were promoting that deployment model, and I remember that people were laughing at us that no, that this will never happen. It requires spectrum, and there will never be spectrum available for local 5G networks. But it did happen. It became a thing. Already 2017, when we were introducing this in an EU level event, then the European regulators took this that, oh, we should start thinking about it and should include some parts of this in the 5G awards, as they did, as several countries did, but not all. There's no common way for doing that. And that is leading to these new kinds of fragmentation. So quite well we had harmonization about which bands are for 3G, for 4G. Then 5G, the bands were a little bit different, but also the national level awarding things were quite different in terms of who got the spectrum. So spectrum sharing then, as the concept that allows two or more radio systems to operate in the same frequency band, that is becoming more and more important. And spectrum sharing exists, like you have that implemented in many situations. But when we talk about the mobile communication, and when we talk about mobile communication spectrum, the exclusive countrywide licensing with protection from harmful interference and awarding this license to an MNO via the spectrum auction seems to be the mainstream model today. We don't speak much about spectrum sharing within that context. It's only inside the one operator. And even the concepts like dynamic spectrum sharing, which allows 4G and 5G to use the same band, it is inside the operator. So one MNO is considering that. But spectrum sharing is so much more. It's about sharing between it can be sharing between different systems at different levels. And then sustainability, what does it mean for spectrum awards? What should happen by introducing sustainability into spectrum awarding? Well, one simple example, what we've been doing for a long time is coverage obligation. That is a form of social sustainability related obligation. That forces the MNOs to deploy in challenge areas. And at the same time, economic sustainability and auction revenues. There are different ways to design the auctions and different like governmental goals, which are very much related to the economic sustainability part. So the spectrum sharing, two or more radio systems operating in the same frequency band, it's been studied a lot in research. It's less used in regulation, but there are models, very advanced models like the CBRS model in the US, which is very much introducing different levels of spectrum access rights. And then there is different types of sharing. I like using vertical spectrum sharing and horizontal spectrum sharing as the two main types, which often exist in realistic systems at the same time. Horizontal spectrum sharing is between systems with the same level of spectrum access right. Vertical spectrum sharing is between different levels of spectrum access rights. And then you have the techniques for interference, because this leads in different types of interference scenarios, depending on the systems, depending on their deployments and the levels of spectrum access rights. So then you have different techniques to manage this complex interference, like databases, dynamic frequency selection, power controls, and so on. And you need the combinations of these. So towards the future, we need new techniques and new models for the shared spectrum access, so that different systems, a number of systems could operate in the band. Traditionally, it's through a geographical separation distance, but how to make this separation distance as small as possible, how to introduce usage as much as possible. But introducing new usage is not very sustainable in itself either. So there we come to these very complex interactions. Anyway, gaining access to spectrum takes a long time. I think you are very familiar with that. So if I came up with a great solution to solve sustainability challenges that require some coverage, how would I get the spectrum for that? I wouldn't. It's very, very difficult. So there's no mechanism for fast access to spectrum for these solutions that to solve major sustainability challenges. We can use the unlicensed bands for following the rules and regulations there. But other than that, it's really tough. And for example, these local solutions, they require spectrum only locally. So making that local spectrum available should in principle be easier than having way larger areas. And one way there is this using the unused bands, like in the cognitive radio time. That's what I was doing my research a lot about. But if some spectrum is unused by the current holder of spectrum access rights, there should be no reason that this band could not be used by another stakeholder. Because it's not very sustainable to leave it just like limit the operations of the next generations just by the awards that were done at some point in time. And this is the major paradigm shift, this use it or lose it principle. Introducing that to old awarding is challenging, but it should be part of all new awards. If you don't use it, then somebody else should be allowed to use that band. So the sharing-based mechanisms, access models together with the techniques to manage the harmful interference would be a key solution, especially for these location-specific services that could address major sustainability challenges. It also applies to connecting the unconnected areas where the operators have not invested in the network because of these economic sustainability challenges. But they still hold the access rights. That spectrum should be made available to another stakeholder that would locally provide the service, like a local community doing it themselves. That improves the social sustainability and does not come at the expense of the economic sustainability. And stakeholders are very important to consider who dominates the discussions. 60 discussions are dominated by the existing strong players. How do we make the new voices heard in this process? Especially in the context of spectrum management. The operators have a lot to say, but luckily in 5G there were the chances to introduce these local stakeholder views into the process. So here I have a summary of my thoughts on sustainable spectrum management, what it could mean. One is that exclusive spectrum licenses should always come with obligations on sustainability, social sustainability, coverage obligations, social sustainability also if you don't use it, you have to give it away. Another user could use it. They're not there everywhere, especially this use it or lose it is not in all awards. Then rapid access to spectrum needs to be ensured with these sharing-based spectrum access models. Third one, the environmental impact of footprint of the different technology combinations can be different, but it's unknown. We don't know what it is, but users want to know that. So requesting that information from the companies, from the operators, that make it visible how much greenhouse gas and energy consumption and others this use of this specific technology combination for using this specific service means for devices, how much resources and materials do they consume? How sustainable is that? By making that information available, we could already make big steps to advance the thinking. The fourth one is the metrics and measurement methods. We can't compare anything if we don't have agreement on what to compare and how to measure it. Energy efficiency comparisons that you see, they are not like there's one way to do that, but you compare whatever you want with something that whatever you want to compare it with, and then we say that it's 50% something. The numbers mean nothing unless the benchmarks are like equal. And then the fifth one, a mix of spectrum management models, unlicensed, locally licensed, exclusive wide area licenses, different light licensing, different modes have different roles in meeting the needs. So we can't just promote one and ignore something else, but have a balanced approach in that. And spectrum sharing, I can't speak enough about that, how to make that a real design consideration from very early on. For 6G, it should be the starting. 6G systems should be built and developed to be based on shared access to the spectrum. There can be exclusivity. Yes, that is a possible way. But the techniques alone should already have the mechanisms that are very much doing this interference management across different deployments towards the income. It's hard to find 6G spectrum where there is no incumbent use. So protecting the incumbents and introducing the networks in a shared manner is definitely a way forward. And then the last one, stakeholder management, proper stakeholder management, so that the views of the dominant players of today's market are not the only voices that are heard. End users, I don't see end users being represented in spectrum discussions anywhere, barely anywhere. Today, we think that end user voices come through the mobile network operators. They don't. Operators are there for business. what they say about consumer views is their perspective, it's their view. It's not what the consumers themselves want to know. I'm a university and I speak with the younger generation, and they want to know what the environmental impact of their digital consumption patterns is. And then I will go to the concluding part. So the sustainability principle, it's a huge thing. I've now looked into it for several years, and the more I think about it, the more bigger it gets. But there are three principles, overall principles: environmental, social, and economic perspective, and they are very much interrelated. The environmental alone has a lot of different metrics and notations of how to improve the energy efficiency, for example, or reduce the consumption of materials. This needs to enter all aspects of ICT development and usage. It's our responsibility to introduce the sustainability within our field. Especially next generation mobile communication must be based on these sustainability principles. Then when we insert the principles into our own work, like the spectrum management, what is sustainable spectrum management? It should not compromise the needs of future generations. Like what we decide now should not lock the markets for too long time to come. That's why this 25-year exclusive licensing without any obligations are not sustainable. They have to come with social sustainability obligations, like covering schools, covering certain challenge areas. Also, economic part there is very important to consider. You can collect a lot of money, but that is, in the end, it's the end user who pays. It's like a tax that the end users eventually pay because it's business operations. And there are many open topics on what fits in one country might not fit in another country. And my fear is that sustainability, when it comes an obligation into things, I hope it does not lead to too much fragmentation between the countries, because this international harmonization has been the whole key thing in wireless communications. The same pieces of equipment can be used in different parts. I also hope that the sustainability requirements will not be too different in the different countries, for example, for the devices, because then you can't use the same devices there. But we need a lot of harmonization in this topic. But it is a new emerging topic, so we have a lot to do about that. And spectrum sharing especially is something that we have to include that early on in the design phase of what that means and how that can promote sustainability aspirations, and not as a restriction that is posed afterwards. The same with the sustainability requirements. They cannot be set as requirements afterwards if they have not been considered in the design process. Then it gets quite challenging. So I will end here. I hope that you got some ideas about what sustainable development could mean within this sector and what it could mean in wireless communications, especially the spectrum management part. And I share that this is our joint responsibility, and I hope we can work on this topic together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, she gave us an idea regarding the theme from researcher perspective. Once again, thank you very much. And from now on, we have short break until 5:10. The panel discussion will start at 5:05. We'll resume with panel discussion. Thank you. We have come to the highlight of the forum, panel discussion. All of the speakers of today will be part of this discussion, and I'm quite sure that they will bring us more profound knowledge on the theme. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Mr. Chonghwan Hwang, Director of Electronics and Telecommunications Research Institute. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the wonderful wonderful night of Seoul last night. So my name is Chonghwan Hwang, and I am working with Electronics and Research Institute in Korea. So before starting today's panel session, I would like to check we have all speakers and online participants. So I will let you know just one thing before starting this one. So yes, Dr. Liu, he was the second presenter in the first session today, but he had another meeting to join, so he left this place early in the right after his presentation. So on behalf of Dr. Liu, I would like to ask you on floor to excuse his absence possible. And we have Mr. O right next to me. Yes, and we have Mr. Amgalar from Mongolia. Okay. And we have Mr. Kosa from Cambodia. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we have online speakers. First of all, we have Mr. Chow from OneApp. Yeah, Chow, can you hear me there?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yeah, that's good. And we have another online speaker, is Mr. I'm sorry. Mr. Kuweka from Tanzania. So can you hear me, Mr. Kuweka? Yeah, I can see you.
I can hear you very well.
Yeah, okay. And last one is Dr. Martini Kovulu from University of Oulu. Okay, yeah, I can see you. Yeah, so we have all speakers, and as I remember, we have online participant, and he's from Romania, Mr. Octavian. So at this time, okay, I see. We don't have Mr. Octavian at this time. So we have all speakers except Dr. Liu at this time. And I would like to proceed today's panel discussion in the same way as yesterday. So I will designate each presentation, and you can ask a question about that presentation. And if you don't have any question, I will ask some question to our speakers instead. And we have 40 minutes, and actually we have 36 minutes at this time to finish our panel discussion. So in my guess, we have about 5 minutes for each presentation to finish question and answer. So I want to remind you that first of all, and I wanted to switch the order of the Q&A time because we have several online speakers, and I just don't want to them to fall asleep before receiving question. Okay, so I want to in a reverse order. So we will start from Dr. Matimikopulu. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so we have Dr. Matimikopulu and from Oulu University in Finland. So is there anyone who have a question about, yeah, we have one. Yeah.
Thank you so much. My name is Ahmed Al-Qaradawi. I am from NTRE, Egypt. Thank you, Doctor, for your presentation, for your valuable presentation. My question is regarding the spectrum. In your perspective, which spectrum range will be effective for 6G? As you know, in case of 5G, the 3.5 gigahertz is the most efficient band for 5G. In case of 6G, which range or which band will be effective? Thank you so much.
That's a great question. And I think now those discussions are starting and there will be very heated discussions. And I can tell from the research community perspective that from the early times of 6G research, a lot of interest was in the very, very high bands, like sub-terahertz band and terahertz band. And many researchers thought that that is the 6G spectrum. But at the same time, as already 5G can use the previous spectrum bands that are there for the previous generations. So the 6G will also be applicable to those existing spectrum bands. So variants will most likely be developed also for those bands. But then what would be actually be the desirable part spectrum range for 6G? It still is in the lower. So due to the propagation characteristics, we have seen the challenges in the millimeter wave, like 26 gigahertz. It's been made available for 5G years ago, but the deployments are very specific. And like here, there are barely any deployments in my country, even though it has been awarded. So it's very local and it's challenging. So it has to be below that to make it make any kind of coverage. But I believe that there will be variants for different parts. I also believe that there will be something in the very, very high, like sub-terahertz ranges, but they'll be for different use cases and they'll be for different parts. And then, as we know, it's hard to find those bands so that we could actually have them just for 6G. I believe in shared access, so sharing as the way to enter, not exclusive countrywide, because that's very, very difficult.
Yeah, so is her with you?
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. It's
Yeah,
okay.
so she is emphasizing on global harmonization to have sustainability for our world. So actually, as I am becoming older and older, I think about my next generation more times. So sustainability definitely is the thing we should keep thinking about when we develop some technologies such as 6G. So I definitely agree with Dr. Matimikopoulou. Yeah. And is there any other question about her presentation? Okay, I see none. So thank you very much, Dr. Matimikopoulou, for answering question and joining today's event. Thank you. Let us give some big applause to her. Then I move to Mr. Kuweka from Tanzania. So, Mr. Kuweka, are you ready to receive a question from here?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. So, is there anyone who have a question about his presentation? Raise your hand. Okay, yeah.
Thank you so much again, and thank you so much, Tanzania, for the presentation, for this nice presentation. Because it's also a terrestrial network, so my question regarding the 5G commercial network, is it right now available in Tanzania or just trials, because you mentioned that 5% only covered by 5G in your country. And also I have another question, how many mobile operators in Tanzania, and how much spectrum assigned to all of them? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think you can hear me.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
thank you
I
very
can
much.
hear you. Yeah, you can answer.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tanzania, we have launched commercial 5G services last year, 2022, and we did an auction for various frequency bands, including 3500 megahertz band and 23 megahertz bands. Currently, the operators who have launched 5G services were assigned spectrum, a block of 80 megahertz in 3500 megahertz band, and in 2300 megahertz band, an operator who is offering 5G has a contiguous block of 70 megahertz band. So the services is commercially launched and it is available in most of the major cities, but we're expecting in the near future expansions will proceed and more people will be covered with these 5G services. So in the minimum, an operator have a 70 megahertz block of spectrum to offer 5G services. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, and do we have another question about his presentation? I see none. Then I have a question. So Tanzania you talk about the environment of Tanzania. So Tanzania is surrounded by many countries. You told us 8 countries are surrounding your country at this time. So we can expect that many interference cases can happen in your country because your country have a very wide border with the surrounding countries. So do you give us some specific numbers? How many interference cases you have found until now?
Thank you very much. As what I've said, yes, we have borders with 8 different countries, and there are some cases of interference that have been happening. I think for the past 5 years, probably there could be about 6 or 7 different cases that happened. And normally once it is happening, we communicate with our neighbors and we jointly go to do the investigation to find out the cause of that interference and possible measures to be taken. So most of the time, once it is happened and we communicate with our neighbors, we've been able to resolve those kind of interference along the borders. So we have some bilateral agreements, especially on the use of spectrum. For example, the case of, let's say, broadcasting services. There are some frequency channels that if it is assigned in one of our neighbors' country, then we'll not be assigning it to other operators within Tanzania. So that has been used as one of the mitigation measures to avoid occurrence of interferences from time to time. So we've been receiving a very good cooperation from our neighbors in case there is an interference happening. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your answering. So your country have a very good relationship with surrounding countries. So communication is a resolution to resolve the spectrum interference, right?
Yes, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is there any question about his presentation? So I see none. So thank you so much for joining us today. So let us give some big applause to Mr. Kuweka. Yeah, thank you. And we can move to Mr. Kosa from Cambodia. So is there anyone who have a question about his presentation? Oh, yeah, we have one.
Good day, sir. My name is Yogo Prihandoko. I'm from the Ministry of ICT in Indonesia. I have a question for Mr. Zhao. Right now, there is many domestic and NGSO satellite that using the LEO constellation for communication service. Because of that, can cause inter-system satellite of coexistence that interference between the satellite and the Earth terminal. My question is simple. How is to protect the existing GSO system for interference?
Hello. Thank you for your question. Currently, we...
Sorry, wrong question. I said Mr. Zhao.
Yeah, so I wanted to be sure that you ask a question to Mr. Kosa, not right? So you can ask him later, please, okay? So Mr. Kosa, you don't need to answer this question. So is there anyone who have a question for Mr. Kosa on floor? Yeah, we have one.
Thank you for your presentation, and I'm Chano Shin from CRMS. In this presentation, you said that Cambodia is now going on KOICA project. And I want to know that when did the KOICA project started to planning? When did you started to planning, and what institutes are connected with the project?
Okay, thank you for your question. For the KOICA funding of this project is under processing, and it's not finalized yet by the KOICA headquarters in South Korea. The consultant of the KOICA agency came to Cambodia during May 2023, and they do the consultation with the other project, with other ministry as well. And he informed me that this project is very potential to get the funding, as it very helpful to support the digital government policies and also digital economy, public policy on the digital policy of Cambodia. And that's why he say it has high potential to succeed. And then after his study, and he working with my team to draft the PCP, project concept paper, and then it is agreed and approved by the KOICA Cambodia, the branch office in Cambodia, and then they submit that PCP to the Cambodia Development Center for endorsement, and they send their request to my ministry for the endorsement to respond them back to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs before the endorsement approved by the government sent to the KOICA headquarters. And now it is the process of sending the letter from Cambodia government to the KOICA headquarters for final approval and before starting the feasibility study at Cambodia. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your detailed explanation. So, are you okay with his answer?
Yes, thank you for answer. And maybe next time, can I ask you by email of the processing?
Yes, that's okay.
Yeah, so I agree with your opinion. So quicker collaboration is very important to Cambodia because you told us that a total of 5 interference cases have been found this year or last year. I don't remember, but that number is very small in comparison with other countries like Mongolia. Mongolia told us that they have found almost 200 interference cases every year. So I think Cambodia needed to improve the performance of RF spectrum monitoring system. So I think in that point that the collaboration with Quika is very important. I think that is a very good chance for Cambodia to manage RF spectrum in a very well. I think that's my opinion. Okay, so is there anyone who have a question about his presentation? So no, so let us give him a big applause. Yeah, thank you. Now we move to Mr. Amgalan from Mongolia. So who has a question about his presentation? Yeah, we have one.
Thank you, Mr. Jandra, for your brilliant presentation. My name is Abdullah Mamun. I am a Director General of Bangladesh Telecommunication Regulatory Commission. As far as I can understand from your presentation that you have 4 mobile phone operators, and we have also 4 mobile phone operators. And last year we did spectrum auction, and obviously there are some big companies like Telenor and Axiata. They are, capturing a significant amount of market in Bangladesh. And my question is regarding the pricing mechanism or pricing policy of, the mobile data or the talk time. Do you, as a regulator, do you actually regulate the pricing process or pricing mechanism, or you just let the market determine the pricing in your country? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Actually, pricing is not my duty. I'm the spectrum manager, but the CRC does the pricing. CRC is set the lowest price of the market, and actually it's mobile pricing is in Mongolia. Compared with the average world is very, very low. It's every people pays average $20, $5 to $20 pay monthly.
Okay, yeah. So his answer is okay with you?
Yeah, I think the process of determining the price, we actually, our government was trying to intervene in the pricing process, because sometimes the floor price or the ceiling price is too high for the common people. But it is also one kind of, it has some also political implication of the pricing. So the government is not actually interfering in that respect. And but still, some companies, they are making, big companies, they are making profit, huge profit out of this mobile data, because they have significant market portion in their hands. So that was actually, I was curious to know about the experience of other countries in terms of regulators' perspective. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think that is very important also to other countries. So as you told us, communication service companies make lots of money every year, but they very hesitate to devote their surplus to our society. So I totally agree with you. We need some regulation to some company to devote their profit to our country, our societies. Yeah. Thank you. And do you have another question about his presentation? Okay. So Mr. Amgalan, yeah. So you told us that every year almost 200 interference cases are being monitored every year, right? You talked about on the slide. So and you have international relationship with Russia and China also to manage the spectrum very well. So I think the management system for spectrum, RF spectrum, is well established in Mongolia, in your country. So I think that is some very good establishment for your country. Okay, yeah. So if there is no another question, then let us give some big applause to him. Thank you very much. Now it's time to move to Mr. Chow from OneApp. So Mr. Chow, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So do you have a question about his presentation? Please raise. Oh, yeah, you have one.
Sorry. My name is Yogo from the Ministry of ICT of Indonesia. My question is the same. Right now, there is many domestic satellite and NGOs that using the LEO constellation for communication service. Because of that, there is many inter-system satellite interference that between the satellite to Earth terminal. My question is simple. How is to protect the existing GSO system for interference? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think I briefly alluded to that during my presentation. There is Article 22 from the radio regulation that protect the GSO, that request all the NGSO to protect the GSOs, and they do that by implementing the EPFD limits, equivalent PFD limits of several kind of satellite to the GSO networks. Every company has different way to implement that, how to abide by these limits. The way we do it is that all our satellite goes through it's a polar orbit, right? So they go through the North Pole to the South Pole. And when they go through the equator, they have to tilt to an angle. So they're not transmitting directly from at the 90 degrees to the ground. So that they avoid completely the kind of the GSO arc. So all the GSO operators are on the same, GSO arc. But when our satellite goes through to that arc, they're not transmitting directly to the in the same line. So it avoids all the inline events. It avoids kind of creating this kind of interference. So from that perspective, so we have several degrees of our GSO arc avoidance. So we can be sure that we're not transmitting directly into the GSO receivers from our LEO satellites. So we are also, we coordinate with, so that's on the kind of on-plan, so on the coordinated band. There's also like spectrum frequencies that need coordination, that require coordination. And in those cases, we reach out to the GSO operators and reach the coordination agreement. So in the case of Indonesia, we have reached coordination agreement with all the Indonesian GSO satellites, and that's the reason we managed to get the landing right for Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that okay with you?
Okay, clear.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Chow, you mentioned a very important thing that was very impressive actually. So you told us that, regulation means to serve the goal of closing digital divide. So at first it sounds like contradiction actually, regulation and closing divide. It seems like those two things are not related to each other. But after considering that word, I finally got to understand the meaning. So regulation can make closing the gap between the people with very high technology like satellite-based cellular services and so on. So I think that is a very impressive remark on your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And I think if I may just drive a little bit on that, it's like there's many regulators and also the telecom policymakers or from the ministries to say who is really keen to connect everyone in their country, right? So it's a primary goal. But often what we see in the different telecom policy is they impose a specific technology. Okay, so in some countries they say, okay, we want to reach fiber to everybody, to every home. Or in some other case, we want to have, the policy would be, we want to use mobile broadband or 5G or 6G in the future to every person. And from that perspective, what we think is the approach should be slightly different. What is important to the consumer and to every citizen is connectivity. They don't really care whether they receive the connectivity from mobile broadband, from fiber, or from satellites, or anything like that. They just want to have access to the internet for the education, for the e-health, and for access to information, basically, right? So all they need is broadband connectivity. They don't care which technology it is. So that's one reason I'm saying that is that policymakers and telecom ministries should target, the end goal is connectivity, is not deployment or proliferation of one specific technology. Because in many places, in the case of OneWeb, for example, we work a lot with the mobile operator in many countries. We work with British Telecom, we work with AT&T or Telstra in Australia, for example. Those mobile operators use our solution to do backhauling, right? Backhauling in the rural area. So basically, they use our solution to deploy, to extend their terrestrial network to the rural area where it's very difficult to roll out fiber. So because the fiber costs money, the fiber costs, depending on the distance, every kilometers of fiber rollout costs you $20,000 per kilometers, right? So when you're 100 kilometers away, it's just not economically feasible to deploy fiber. So I'm just putting that as an example. In some case, a combination of satellites and terrestrial network, typically 5G or Wi-Fi in some case, could serve better the citizen. And all they care at the end, again, is just connectivity. It's not a specific technology. So technology neutrality is very key in pushing that policy.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, thank you for your detailed answer. So do you have another question about his presentation? Yeah, Mr. O.
네, 저희 원앱 서비스를 하면서
So as you provide services, have you gotten any complaints on interference?
Interference. So he is just wonder there is some complaint about spectrum interference in operation of one app service until now. Can you answer that?
Yeah, I think so far so good. As I mentioned, we started operating commercially since last year in some part of the globe. This is not everywhere yet. But so far, in those places where we serve, we don't have issue with the interference with the GSO network or with the other NGSO network. We are able to coexist, peacefully.
So, are you okay? Yeah. So, thank you, Mr. Chao. I wish you have a good luck for your business in the future. So let us give some big applause to him. Thank you. And we are running out of our time, so we move to the last presentation. So we have Mr. O. So do you have a question about his presentation? Mr. Tong? Yeah.
I'm Minh from the AIFM Vietnam. I have a question about, because now we have many satellite provide in the world. So sometimes they are actually accidentally provide in your territory. So there are any way to detect them or any policy to manage them? Thank you.
Miso, you can answer in Korean. We have an interpreter. Yeah.
So when the interference occurs, so if it happens inside the region, within the region, then we have to go on site. And then if that was caused by satellite technology, then we need to manage based on the Earth station.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so okay. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, yeah. That's great. So, do you have another question? Yeah, we have one. I think that is the last question.
Thank you. I'm Denis Karasira representing Rwanda, and I work with the Rwanda Space Agency. And my question is about interference. As of your experience and outcomes of investigations on interferences, I would ask whether it has been in your findings that they were caused, the interferences were caused by the the non-compliance with existing regulations, or whether there is a gap or challenges to be addressed by the regulations. Thank you.
어떤 이제 허가
So if interference happens because of non-compliance thing, then we have to take a legal action. Or if there was a mistake or any like breakdown of the equipment caused the interference, then we take actions on site or we fix it on site.
Yeah. So can you move to another question? Okay, yeah. You can ask a question, yeah. That is final one. I hope so.
So good evening. This is Mohammad Nurul Hafiz, Secretary Bangladesh Telecom Regulatory Commission. So my question is not maybe not related with the presentation, but I have a queries to learn about you. Is there any guidelines or practices of network roaming in national level in any countries? Allowed roaming, such as international roaming network is allowed, but in national level, is there any policy or practices? Is there any elsewhere in the world?
Mongolia does not implement the international roaming, but we are concerning and work on it. And now the law is fixed, and maybe by the next year we will implement the national roaming on the 4G service.
So you are not
yet implemented.
Not allowed. Okay. Anybody has I don't know in what the practice is in Korea or other countries. Those who are participating here, if have because we are now trying to make a guidelines for the national operators. As other countries, we have 4 operators, and we just allowed on national governmental operators and other private operators allowed 2 operators to roaming service. Okay. So thank you very much.
Okay. That is some real last one. Okay. Yeah. Oh, there is some poster rage.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. My question is regarding, would like to ask to Mr. Ho about the interference. Since Korea implemented the 5G the first, and I experienced it. Yeah, I see the base station in Korea is almost a whole countries already implemented. So how can you manage the interference between the mobile C-band with the C-band of the satellite that currently used? How can you manage it? With just 20 megahertz guard band, it can be solve the problem, 100% solve the problem or not? Yeah, thank you.
So in Korea, 5G has been distributed and satellite broadcasting has been affected because of the interference coming from 5G. But mostly, when we receive the satellite broadcasting from overseas, then we resend it through our satellite. So to the broadcasters or the broadcasting operators, we ask them to install the filter so that they would not be affected by 5G. And I'm not sure about the 20 gigahertz, but could you send your question by email so that I can search more and then send you back?
Question by email, right?
Yes, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you make it quick?
Yeah.
We have to finish it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. My name is Ahmed Al-Qaradawi. I am from NTRE Egypt, and my question to Mr. O. Mr. O, how do you define the source of interference, especially in case of outside? That's my question. Thank you.
저희가 이제
So if interference comes from outside the country, for example, well, I show you the questions and the interferences actually that I show you came from outside our country. And then when they come in, and when we detect, then we can find we can define the sources, and then to resolve that issue, we contacted the satellite operator of that country so that we can remove the interference together.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, okay. So now I think it is some time to finish our event. First of all, I would like to appreciate CRMS for having me here. And I would like to thank everyone on this stage and the people online. And yeah, so thank you for joining us. And I hope you have a good luck in your research and business and so on. Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank all the panelists making the discussion really insightful with your expertise. It allows us to better understand the theme and the same depth. So my appreciation goes to the moderator for leading this discussion. So would you please give another big applause to him? Thank you. Well, over the past 2 days, many industry experts and attendees from various countries joined this forum, and that enabled us to take a closer look into the theme from various angles. So on behalf of the organizing committee, I convey my sincere appreciation to all of you. Well, I hope the insight gained here will lead us toward a bright future in the global spectrum industry. And before we conclude this event regarding the survey, please fill out the survey form. We already distributed the survey form with your program book and submit it to the registration desk. And for online participants, we sent you the link for survey, so please check your email. So that brings us to the end of this forum. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye.